live, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the show.
Yes, and just to go ahead and throw this out here in the beginning real quick. So we're going to be doing a weekly space. Well, I am at least. I'm going to be doing a weekly space referred to as Monday Blowouts. And we are going to be talking about different topics and whatnot. This coming Monday, which will be June 30th, we're going to be covering the topic of How the British Invented Communism and Blamed It on the Jews by Richard Poe. So far, this book, I read through the first 8 chapters, initially speaking, and it was eye-opening, to say the least. And unfortunately, I put the book down for a long time, probably about 3 or 4 months, basically around the time that I moved. And I haven't touched it since. And I regret doing that because holy shit, some of the information in this book is fucking bewildering. So, catch us on Mondays. I'm going to try to force Gail and Stoner and all of them to attend the spaces as well because they're going to be a great time. Come listen to me lose my shit on people because, well, I'm going to be doing it a lot. That's actually why I chose the name, actually, funny enough.
Alright, we shall make sure to include the link to that in the video description. So if you happen to be watching it close to that day, make sure to click it.
Well, I'll be, it's scheduled and everything, so, I'll send the link to you here in a bit. Right, so, with that out of the way, let's talk about fucking Iran, and let's talk about Israel and the absolute shitfest that has come about over the course of the past, what are we on, day 12, 13?
Yes,
13.
Day 13.
This is day 13 of honestly, we can call this the greatest fireworks show of all time. I guess we'll start from the beginning because we kind of had that emergency oh shit thing happen with the last episode when this all first started. But the key thing that I really want to cover is how each of these players kind of align and how they kind of interconnect with certain aspects of the world in the current day, but also add on some historical context to kind of bring people into a thought process of, hey, maybe reacting to this thing in the current moment is not the only way to look at it. Because unfortunately, in terms of Iran, there's a lot of people out there who are retarded and just go oh, Iran is, hey, Stoner, Iran is,
Right.
some terrorist state that, it needs to be destroyed, blah, 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 so on and so forth. They view it in the same light as, Iraq and Saudi Arabia and Turkey and so on. So they just view it as it needs to be destroyed and got rid of. The problem with this idea of just destroy things and get rid of it is you leave vacuums. And those vacuums tend to create issues for everybody, but it creates opportunities for the select few, the few that actually know how to use those opportunities. One of those select opportunities came about with in November of 1917 with the Bolshevik Revolution. Well, who benefited from the Bolshevik Revolution the most? It wasn't the Bolsheviks.
The British?
Yeah, it was the British. And there are different events like this throughout history that have created the impetus for specific nations, and it's always a few nations. It's not like an opportunity that, say, for example, Iraq implodes, creates this power vacuum. Iran wasn't going to be able to step in and take advantage of the situation. They just don't have the ability to come out of their shell. And that's the thing for most countries, is that they just logistically can't take advantage of these opportunities. It's only a few select groups that have this opportunity. So one of the things that is very important to the situation with Iran was, people immediately started freaking out that the Israelis started bombing Iran. And, one of the first things we heard is that this was unprovoked, that it was against international law, et cetera, et cetera. Well, that's not true. One of the first things you have to understand is preemptive self-defense is a doctrine that's codified in the Charter of the United Nations. So no matter what, a country, if they can claim and then present evidence of preemptive self-defense as a reason for their attack, they're covered under the United Nations Charter, the same way that the Russians did the same thing with Ukraine. Now, of course, I just brought up two juxtaposed positions, by the way. Most people look at the situation with Russia and they reel. And they're like, oh my God, like the Russians just attacked unprovoked. They look at the Israelis the same way. Oh my God, they just attacked unprovoked. And it's like, but no, we didn't. And this is a problem that a lot of people have, is that they don't know the laws that they're talking about. Like when they say this is a violation of international law, like, do you even actually know what international law you're referring to? Because as long as you use the right reasoning, you're covered under international law. So, that's a first big thing that I noticed with a lot of the takes that a lot of these people were having across the board. The second thing that I would like to bring up particularly is the way that the U.S. got involved. Now, I'm going to be completely fucking frank, and you guys can back me up. I was straight up saying, we're not going to get involved. We're not going to do shit. There's no reason. Politically, it makes no sense. And militarily, we can do it, but why move those assets in when we could have those assets in reserve just in case something else happens? It really didn't make sense for us going in. But then we went in. And the usual players lost their shit. The usual suspects decried us going in. And it kind of set a tone that it was like, now wait a minute. Why didn't they want us going in? Why didn't they want us doing what everyone else wants us to do? Because the vast majority of people around the world agree that Iran, the mullahs specifically, the mullahs were a threat. Everybody, it's the vast majority of the world agrees on this. The IRGC is considered a massive threat. And a lot of people in the European Union, very particularly, lost their absolute minds when the Israelis bombed the IRGC and when the U.S. bombed the Iranian nuclear project. Now, one thing that I would note, and this is very particular, and it's not talked about nearly enough, was the Shah. Now, boys, if I remember correctly, the Shah was overthrown in Iran, correct?
Yes, like half a century ago.
Well, the problem is the Shah's still around. It's just his grandson now, and he lives in the UK. And he's been making appearances since the Israelis and the Iranians kicked things off on October 7th. So, yeah. Really, really weird coinky-dink if I don't say so. Really weird coinky-dink.
Yes.
Now, personally, I'm of the opinion that at this point in time, given and I kind of a bit of a rabbit hole that I went down earlier. I say that as I compared it to a 90-foot hole, or 90-foot hole, 30 meters as what I actually said, but 90 foot. And as part of that mental exercise that I was doing, I made the connection that the Shah, for all intents and purposes, is Leon Trotsky. He lines up in the best possible position, is put in the best possible position, and comes in and is the savior of a nation. The same way that Leon Trotsky was put in and given the best possible position to then come in and, quote unquote, save the Russian people. So, I don't trust that man as far as I can throw him, and I wouldn't trust him anywhere near the Iranian borders. By the way, I will note that there's been a lot of back and forth that I've seen where the Iranians, like the actual Iranians, not the, closet Anglophiles, are basically saying if that man tries to come back into Iran, we will kill him. So I don't think we have to worry about that. This is why you don't destroy countries.
Yes.
But you guys go ahead for a second. I'll shut up and let you kind of unpack that.
Yeah, so it is also worth noting that it's not just been the British that have been heavily pushing for the Shah to return. It's also been the Israelis and specifically Netanyahu. This has been It's been specifically a Netanyahu goal of the war to replace, not only to replace the current regime, but replace it with the Shah, a secular leader, as opposed to some of the less hardliners who wanted some more moderate Muslim leader to replace the current regime.
Yes. And one of the things that I'll point out about that situation is that, well, do you think Bibi isn't a fucking British asset either?
It's possible.
Because with the kind of spanking that Bibi took on the White House lawn, I believe that was this morning actually, where Trump, it's so great listening to Trump say the fuck, say fuck. It's just so fucking great. Yes. I love it. Whenever that man actually cusses, it's like he's mad, because the only time he cusses is when he's mad. It's kind of great. And he, you can tell that his statement was directed at the Israelis. Mind you, the Israelis, if you look on Twitter, lost their fucking minds. They lost their shit. And they were not happy with his statements at all. Some of the statements were, some of the more poignant statements that I heard or saw were like, oh, maybe if we drop bombs on DC, maybe they'll get it, or stuff like that. That was the overall gist of most of the statements I was seeing. And it's like, so why do you guys want the Shah back and British influence back over Iran? What's the dealio here, bud?
Well, one thing
so it really,
I think you should consider is, specifically with Bibi, is that it may be a much more personal, decision than just, ideological, because, are you aware that Netanyahu has had corruption charges that are pending on him for the past, past half decade now? And then there's only one thing.
That corruption investigation spans about 20 years.
All right, but at the moment, there's really only one thing preventing charges from actually being brought, and that's the fact that he's currently prime minister, right? And Now, here's why I think it might be a bit more personal, because, like, he cannot afford to have his government, his coalition collapse. And what we've seen ever since October 7th is one faction of his coalition that's basically been in control ever since. And that is... It's often been said, and I think we've even said it before, so you're probably familiar, but it's often been said, you're familiar with how people say that there are degrees of Zionism? And
yes.
Types? One of those types is, like, which is, like, the most hardline, is basically actual Jewish supremacists, right? They're people who believe that, like... So, that faction is represented by Ben-Gvir and Smotrich. One of them is, I believe, defense secretary, but those people have been threatening to, like, withdraw their support from the coalition and basically force Bibi out.
Yeah, I forget the name. I forget the name of that party. I know Bibi's party is the Likud.
Yes.
And then I forget the name of that party.
Yeah, but they've basically been, like, they're basically in control of his government at this point, and he, like, basically, if he doesn't do what they want, he goes to prison. Or at least he goes to trial for whatever corruption charges they're pending against him.
Well, and here's the problem I have with that argument, and it's the only problem I have with that argument, because that argument is valid. But the problem I have with that argument is that it almost feels scripted. The actions... So one of the things that I'll point out with my reasoning is that I look at October 7th. And that the events on October 7th, they were incredibly scripted. To the point that it was a masterclass operation. Like, I'm sorry, I don't care how you feel about the event itself. If you actually look at what happened on the ground, it was the most masterclass assault and raid I have ever seen. This was Navy SEALs, DevGru, fucking Rangers level fucking coordination and cohesion. Like, this was some of the most abject fucking amazing shit ever.
Yes. And also, then, worth noting, done by a population that has the average IQ of 65. Not something they're known for pulling off. Right? If you look at them in general, this is not something they're known... Like, executing things very well is not something Hamas is known for.
But then, following on from that, going into the wee hours of October 8th, the operation fell apart. Spectacularly. Now, a lot of people might immediately jump on, oh, the Israelis started mounting a defense and started counterattacking and yada. They didn't really start actually counterattacking until the 9th.
Yeah.
There wasn't a concerted counterattack until the 9th. When, in reality, I have to ask the question. The U.S. military has a unit specifically designed to pull this kind of shit off. We call them the Green Berets. Now, I know for a fact that it wasn't the Americans that did that, because it's not within our interests. It's actually bad for us to fuck with Israel in that regard. So, who helped Hamas? Now, we know it wasn't the Israelis, because the Israelis, look at what's happened. Bibi Netanyahu is sitting there, he's the Knesset and several other government buildings are constantly surrounded by Israeli military police because of the threats against him by the population of Israel. They don't have a particular like for the guy because of his handling of October 7th and the follow-on operations. So, who pulled that off? The IRG, I don't think the IRGC did it. I just don't. Because the IRGC, this didn't benefit Iran at all either. Iran had to activate all of their fucking cards.
Right.
because Hamas was, how should I put it? It was a loose cannon in their deck.
Yes.
It wasn't meant to be. It was meant to be a constant pressure point, but it wasn't meant to be like, oh, you're going to do high-level operations. That's what Hezbollah was for. Mm-hmm. Hezbollah was the coordinated, cohesive military force, and the reason why the Israelis were scared shitless of it. Because you had a military force with the capability of invading Israel. So I doubt the Iranians did it. I don't think the IRGC was behind it. So who benefits the most from causing maximum chaos and then swooping in and taking advantage of the power vacuum that is left in place? By the way, I'm smelling crumpets and tea real fucking badly right now.
Right.
So I'm going to go out on a limb, and I'm going to say it. I've heard other people start talking about this concept, given the way the British have been conducting themselves in regards to this whole situation as in its entirety from October 7th to current day. I have a good feeling that the idea that MI6 assisted Hamas in launching their raid on October 7th, and then the raid falling apart by the time the 8th rolled around because the MI6 guys said, hey, we got it. We got done with what we wanted to do. Let's get the fuck out of here. And then as soon as their command and control was gone, Hamas fell apart. I don't think it's much of a stretch.
And so, what specifically do you think the British would have there and gotten out of that? Aside from just chaos, aside from just general chaos,
create a power vacuum in Iran, which then they can swoop in, install the Shah, and then have control and direct access to the Iranian oil and energy reserves as a whole. Iran sits on the 4th largest amount of oil in the world.
Right.
They sit on the 3rd largest natural gas deposit in the world. Like, their energy reserves are fucking spectacular. Why wouldn't the British want control of that? Oh, by the way, as we were discussing earlier, the history of BP. Do you want to know what its name was prior to 1953 when they changed their name to British Petroleum?
What?
British Iranian Petroleum. Or something to that degree. Anglo-Iranian. That's what it was. Anglo-Iranian oil company. Yeah. The Anglo-Iranian Oil Company. Before then, it was the Anglo-Persian Oil Company, APOC. Mm-hmm. So the British already have a history with one of their biggest corporations, the biggest corporation of the British Isles. They already have a history of utilizing Iran as an asset. If they create a power vacuum by everybody going hog wild on Iran and reinstalling the Shah, one, it completely checks the U.S. The U.S. loses any influence it has over that country, which then creates a pressure point or continues as a pressure point in the Middle East for the U.S. in regards to our allies on the Arabian Peninsula. And then also checks the Russians, because then it allows the British to shut down the northeast or the north-south trade corridor. So, strategically speaking, it's a massive British fucking goal to retake Iran so they can fucking do their thing. You know, you salt to taste, but I think I'm pretty well and truly over the target when it comes to this. Mind you, I will also point out, do you notice how the Shah then unfollows Donald Trump on Twitter? And now
it was on Instagram, not Twitter.
Yeah, Instagram, sorry. He unfollows Trump on Instagram and then proceeds to go quiet.
Yep.
I don't think he's given a public appearance since the ceasefire was announced.
Yeah.
Which you think he would if he was legitimate.
Yeah.
Now, to speak on the outcome of this whole thing, and I think this is actually one of the greatest moves that has been made by Donald Trump in regards to this, is the fact that the Iranians are holding to the fucking agreement.
Mm-hmm.
Like the Israelis last night. So it's really funny how we identified like, oh, hey, the ceasefire actually just started. And yet 45 minutes or so beforehand, the Israelis were screaming and shouting about how the Iranians had violated the ceasefire.
Yes.
And yet it turned out in reality they hadn't violated the ceasefire. The ceasefire hadn't even begun yet.
Yes.
So at the end of the day, there's and mind you, I don't think the Israelis are purposely just being dickheads. I think they're literally just that fucking frazzled. I think they're just they're that PTSD ridden across the board that they're jumpy as fuck and ready to just kill whatever the fuck comes around the corner.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I'm not gonna give them any shit for it, but at the same time, it's like, hey, you know, chill the fuck out. It's okay. There's no more bombs coming your way. I will also point out that I don't think Khomeini's been seen so far.
No, my understanding, he's basically been hiding in a bunker somewhere for the past week or so.
Well, that's the problem. Is why wouldn't he come out at this point in time?
It's possible he's still worried that the Israelis have people inside they have people on the inside who are still ready and able to kill him.
That's the thing, is I don't think that's what it is.
I mean, it might not be what it is, but it does seem like a reasonable fear to have if you're
it's a plausible choice, but and I won't take that away from you. Here's my take: the Iranian military, as a whole, is a bifurcated system. You have the Iranian military, and then the IRGC.
Yeah.
The IRGC has control of the ballistic missiles and the air defense assets in the country. The Iranian military doesn't use those. They're not the ones that control that stuff. The IRGC are. The Iranian military has, all the BRDMs and the tanks and the AKs and stuff, and they basically do high-level police work, basically. The Iranian military secured the borders and the passes leading into Iran during the air campaign. And they were relatively untouched. There were some instances where Iranian military assets were being hit, but overall they were relatively untouched from the air campaign. The IRGC, on the other hand, those motherfuckers got bombed to shit and back. If I remember correctly, the highest level guy in the IRGC at this point in time was some lieutenant colonel. That's how fucking obliterated the command structure of the IRGC was. And the fact that a lieutenant colonel is the highest ranking guy left.
Yeah, and I think something that I have heard from a long time ago that may be relevant, because I'm not sure if you know this, but it has been a consistent neocon talking point since the Bush era that if you were just to hit enough IRGC, if you just bomb enough IRGC bases or whatever they have, that they then believe the Iranian people would rise up and overthrow the government. So,
here's
interesting that's
what
exactly what Israel did. For allegedly to attempt that exact thing.
Well, that's the thing, is the people themselves didn't rise up.
Yes.
I think the Iranian military said, hey, why don't we just fucking handle this? I think the Iranian military cooed him. I don't think they killed him, but I think he's on extreme house arrest right now.
Oh.
He's probably under lock and key and armed guard. That's my take.
Right.
I don't think they would kill him, because at the end of the day, it would make more sense to keep him alive than to cause the IRGC to go crazy. What's left of it,
right?
To go crazy by shooting fucking.
Am I sensing a soon-to-be reference to the Tsar's family during the Russian Civil War?
Oh, did you catch on to that? Did you catch on to that?
Yes.
You mean the exact reason why?
And
reason
why it was a bad idea? Basically, why Trotsky had them killed when they shouldn't have been.
Oh, again, we've identified that Trotsky was a British asset.
Right.
And why Lenin got rid of him.
Yeah.
When he did, because Trotsky had orchestrated the killing of the Tsar, and it caused the Russian Civil War.
Yes.
Yeah. So we're at this point in time, I think there's two plausible answers. Either Khomeini is so like his pants are so filled with shit that he's glued to his seat, and he's just like, I ain't fucking coming out of this bunker. Fuck you. Or he's under house arrest and he's been told you're no longer in charge, but we're not going to kill you because that's just going to be bad business. We're gonna be establishing a provisional government.
Yeah.
And at that point in time, the U.S. wins. See, here's the great part about it, is that all these people who said like this was going to drag us into a new war in the Middle East and blah blah blah. If the U.S. gets a new provisional government that it can work with in Iran, it checks the fucking British and the Europeans so fucking hard, while also checking the Chinese. Like, think about that. Two birds, one fucking stone. And that stone happens to have the fourth largest fucking oil reserves and third largest fucking gas fields in the world. Holy shit. That's one hell of a win. Right. I'll take that win. I'll take that dub every day of the week.
Yeah.
Like, this is one of the things that I was pointing out to people and just fucking laughing my ass off. It's like, can you guys take a small L to win the biggest dub possible? Like, come on. Like, this is like being mad that you didn't fucking have, you're playing fucking hockey. I'm gonna pull a Tom here and go to hockey. You're playing hockey and you guys let one goal through, and then proceed to fucking knock them out with 5 more afterwards.
That's fine. I am Canadian. I can handle hockey references.
Yeah, well, yeah, you are Canadian. Yes. But no, that's what it's like. It's like yeah, we let one through just to give them a little bit of confidence to think that they might be able to push it back, and then proceed to fucking obliterate them. Like, that's what happens here. And mind you, this weakens the Israelis at the same time, because now, if the provisional government agrees to denuclearization, holds up their agreement with Russia with the North-South corridor, and then proceeds to work with the Americans jointly, what are the Israelis going to do? The Israelis are going to be sitting there wondering what the fuck to do with themselves because they no longer have any enemies. Which, in and of itself, is not true, but we'll get to that.
All right. So, one thing, are you aware that over the past couple of days, Iran had pulled out of the nuclear non-proliferation agreement? Like, their parliament had...
Yes.
Yeah. So But I'm
Yes,
not
I am
entirely
aware.
sure if they're going to be agreeing to denuclearization anytime soon.
Well, no, I mind you, the people who because remember, Iran is a de facto one-party state, the mullahs.
Yes.
If a coup was initiated by the military, which again, that's the option I'm going with, I think it happened. Because again, the fact that people are out parading in the streets celebrating this shit in Tehran right now tells me that a coup fucking happened.
It's possible.
Like the videos we're getting out of Tehran are hilarious.
Yeah.
Like bro, with how many bombs got dropped on Tehran, the fact that these motherfuckers are lighting off fireworks is hilarious to me. I'm like, wow, I thought you guys would have some PTSD by now, but apparently you just got nostalgia.
Yeah.
May I ask one question? I might have missed this because I was a little bit busy a minute ago. But what's going to happen to all those folks that were constantly chanting "Death to America, Death to Israel"?
I mean,
Well,
they'll still
at
be
the end of
there.
the yeah, they'll still be there, but at a certain point, they're going to get, like, again, if the mullah, if a provisional government is established and they reform the government as a multi-party system, the mullahs will still exist because they'll be able to retain some political force because they will have support from key areas, but they're going to be a minority. And that's if you have a multi-party system. I don't know what a provisional government would do.
Militaries militaries coupping their government aren't exactly known for, having multi-party systems. They're more known for
remember that's what happened in Iran the first time. Right. When the Shah was overthrown, the military was the one that couped him, and then the provisional government that they set up afterwards, they were getting ready to hold elections when the mullahs overthrew the provisional government.
Interesting.
They were getting ready to hold elections the first time around. So, at the end of the day, there is the possibility that the mullahs could resurge, but with people having lived under the mullahs for half a century now, I don't think they're going to be popular enough. I think it's going to turn into like what happened in Russia with the Communist Party. Mm-hmm. Like the Communist Party still polls like 8% of the electorate. Yeah, sure. But if you look at the demographic, it tends to be the really old people.
Yes. And the one thing, because you said you're viewing it as there are kind of two options. Either he was cooed, or he's just kind of like terrified in fear. Basically he's just like hiding because he's in absolute terror. Are you aware that there were some reports that came out earlier, or actually, yes, maybe midway through the war, that basically said that his advisors weren't even basically stopped bringing him news of what was happening because he was too distraught over like how badly they were, taking that L. And
I had heard bits and pieces of it, but I had never seen a.
Oh, fair enough. But like, if you take that as true, I think it would point more towards the former of he's just kind of like, he's just kind of, as you said, like stuck to the floor or stuck to his chair in his own fear of shit.
He shit himself so violently that he's now stuck to his seat, and he needs to be pried off with a crowbar.
Yes. And again, I have no way to verify whether or not those reports are true or false, but
that's the problem. I saw a bit of that for a couple days, but then those reports kind of just fell over. So I was like, okay, maybe, but at the same time, here's the thing, is both can be true at the same time as well. The motherfucker could be so fucking scared that he's not coming out of the bunker, but the military said, okay, well, we're going to keep you in the bunker, and we'll let you out when we decide to. Like, that could be a thing.
Right.
Like the military just has a fucking fence a temporary fence that they put up around the bunker entrance, and they're just like, okay, you can stay in there, boss. We'll keep you safe. Don't worry.
Yeah. But one other
the big bad Jews aren't gonna get you.
Yeah, one other thing, just because of how how heavily infiltrated the Iranian government, like all of Iran was by Mossad. Wouldn't that news of a coup have leaked already? Because like, especially if it's not in if it's not in Mossad's interest that happens, wouldn't that get leaked?
So that's the thing, is that at the end of the day, here's the thing, is that Mossad's infiltration wasn't as amazing as they played it up. So yes, they did infiltrate very well into Iran, but it was mainly operating from, they were setting up forward operating positions inside of Iran. Like, for example, all the drones that were hitting Tehran during the airstrikes that were, like, these were the small FPV drones that were flying in and taking out individual people. Mm-hmm. These drones were being assembled at a place on the outskirts of Iran, and they were being launched off the roof of that building. And so then, when that operation had concluded, all of those people had exfilled out. And that's the thing, is that, like, a lot of the infiltration was more from a raid standpoint, not from a, the defense minister was secretly a Mossad double agent or some shit like that. Like, it wasn't.
So it wasn't deep cover shit. So it wasn't like deep cover infiltration.
Yeah, it wasn't. It was there. I have not seen any indication of deep cover shit at all. I have not seen any indication of it. And mind you, with how thoroughly fucking blasted the fucking Iranian leadership was after the smoke settled, it was like, well, that kind of proves that there wasn't much deep cover, because why would you kill fucking everybody? Like, if you had guys in deep cover, why would you kill them? But again, notice how the leadership of the military itself was relatively untouched. The IRGC leadership, again, we've already identified. Most of those motherfuckers are gone. Mm-hmm. But the leadership of the Iranian military itself, relatively untouched. If I remember correctly, a couple guys did end up getting hit in the crossfire, basically. But that's because, like, they were visiting somebody that was on the target list. And so they got killed as part of the strike. Oh. It wasn't like they were being targeted. Like again, I just don't think I have a good feeling that there was it was probably a very quiet coup. Well, that's also the thing.
So before this war,
coups don't have to be loud. Coups can be very quiet.
Yeah. So before this war, what was the relative balance of power between the IRGC and the military in Iran? Who was stronger?
Basically 75-25 kind of deal.
In favor of
the IRGC. The IRGC, like, for example, the IRGC was in control of, again, ballistic missile systems, air defense. Most of the pilot corps was IRGC. Most of the Navy assets were IRGC, minus, I do believe the Iranian Navy, the proper Iranian Navy, did have a couple frigates, but the majority of assets were IRGC. The majority.
I see.
So what you're saying is they were kind of akin to how the Heer and the SS were during the Second World War.
That's actually a really good way to put it. Thank you. That's a very good way to put it. It's a lot of comparison between the SS and the Heer.
What was the Heer?
Very much so. The Army.
Oh yeah. The Wehrmacht.
No. The Wehrmacht was the armed forces.
Oh, wait, so the armed forces was different than the army?
No. So the
Think
army
about it this way. Think about it this way. May I please try to describe this?
Well, I was just going to explain it very easily.
What? Okay, you know how down here how we have the Air Force, Army, Navy, Marine Corps, whenever he was saying that, that's what he was talking about. He was talking about all those branches.
Oh.
That's what the Wehrmacht was basically.
The U.S. No, okay. When we refer to the U.S. military, we're referring to the whole.
Yes.
When you're referring to the whole in the case of the German military during that time period, it was called the Wehrmacht.
Oh.
So the Wehrmacht included all the land forces. I think that's actually what Wehrmacht means, is land forces. Because then you have the Kriegsmarine and then you have the Luftwaffe.
Yes.
But anyways, point is, getting off track. The point is that the disparity between the two when it came to exercise of power and assets, it was firmly in the favor of the IRGC. Firmly.
I see.
But this isn't, and this is the thing, is it's not uncommon in Middle Eastern countries in general, because you look at Saudi Arabia, for example, the Saudi security forces are not nearly as well equipped as the Saudi Royal Guard, for example.
That makes sense because, you know, the Saudi royals are always kind of in some danger of being overthrown.
Well, actually, we can get into that in a different episode. It's actually really funny because it's actually a lot more fucking complicated. A lot more complicated. But the point is what you end up having here is that the people who win under the current circumstances are the U.S. and Russia. The Russians still retain the North-South trade corridor. And then the U.S. gets rid of a regime that is completely and utterly incompatible with its mission in the Middle East, which the whole purpose of the mission of the United States in the Middle East, and this was lost to us for years and years and years because we didn't understand what the fuck was going on because so much was going on at once, is defeating the British Empire. At the end of the day, that's what our mission was. The problem is that there were so many Anglophiles in our government that it prevented us from actually seeing that mission through. Because now we have the Saudis on our side, we have Bahrain, Qatar, UAE, Oman, fucking, you know, ostensibly Iraq, but Iraq is, you know, they're still recovering, so, you know, they'll take some time. And then you got Israel, Egypt, or not, Egypt is North Africa, but, you know, you get what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
And then Iran now. With Iran, it basically blunts anything that the British can do. Period, in a story. At this juncture, the EU's lost. And now we can start the process of fixing the wrongs and start working towards an actual solution to the problem. Now we can look at Israel and be like, okay, bud, hey, they got rid of their nukes. Now you need to get rid of your nukes. Like, you're not under threat anymore. You're not going to die. You just need to fucking listen and just play along and everything will be just okay. And eventually it might take 20 years. It might take 30 years. But eventually the Israelis will give up their nukes. And then the process of looking at Turkey, which Turkey is a big fucking problem. Now that I've reread the section of the book that I was working on initially, and I've got the modern context, I'm now looking at Turkey in a whole different fucking light. The Ottoman Empire never died, ladies and gentlemen. It never did. The empire is living strong right now, and you just don't realize it. Oh, by the way, in relation to Turkey, let's talk about Syria a little bit. Because everybody in Israel is freaking out because of Jelani. Everybody's freaking out about it. Who the fuck does Jelani work for? Honest question. Who the fuck does this guy work for? Because clearly he doesn't work for the Brits. He doesn't work for the Turks. Because he's checked them. He's checked them.
Well,
he is...
I mean, considering he used to be Al-Qaeda, and we all know who funded a lot of Al-Qaeda, he may well work for the U.S.
That's the thing I'm saying. I think he's an American asset. I think he's an honest-to-goodness U.S. asset. Because here's the thing. What did Jolani do after the overthrow of Assad? What's the one key thing that he did that gives away that he is most likely a U.S. asset?
Didn't he
abandon... I guess two things. Two things.
Didn't he basically abandon his enmity or his stated position towards Israel, like his hostility towards Israel?
That's part of the second thing he did. That's part of it.
What was the first
one? He allowed the Russians to retain Tartarus. Or Tartus, or however the fuck you say the city's name. Oh. He let them retain the port. The Russians are still operating in Syria. Even though everybody was screaming that the Russians are finally pushed out of Syria, they're still fucking there. They're still there. And yet everybody celebrated that the Russians were finally defeated in Syria. I don't know what kind of shit you're looking at. They're still there. They're still doing business. They've been working alongside the Jolani government the entire fucking time. And mind you, I've been looking into it a little bit. The groups that are currently going around Syria, fucking looting and pillaging in the Alawite areas and the Druze areas and a few other places like that. I'm not saying Jelani's a good guy. I'm not saying that by any fucking stretch of the imagination. But a lot of these groups happen to be like fringe element groups that when Jelani gave the order to stand down because Damascus had been taken, these were the groups that said, no, fuck you, we're still on jihad.
Right.
These were the groups that refused to stand down. And mind you, the Jelani faction of the movement is currently fighting them. So, again, I posit the question, who the fuck does Jelani work for? Now, here's the second thing that he did. One, you are correct. As part of the second thing he did, he renounced his whole jihad on Israel. He started making overtures to work with Israel.
Didn't he also let Israel use their airspace during the attacks on Iran?
Yes. Mm-hmm. But what did he do right after making those overtures to Israel?
What?
He sat down with the president of the United States.
He did?
He met with the president of the United fucking States.
Really? That I had no idea about.
Yeah.
Like, I assume he came to America?
I don't remember if he came to the U.S. or if it was during one of Trump's trips over to the Middle East. I don't remember, but they met.
Interesting.
And they talked. So again, I'm just going to say it. Who does Jelani work for? I'm guessing it's the fucking CIA, or not the CIA, but the U.S. government. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to say he works for the CIA because there's still a lot of... There's a bunch of Anglophile elements in the CIA stuff.
We can say he maybe used to work for the CIA. Now he works...
Okay. We can say that. We can say it. We flipped him. We flipped him as an asset.
Yes.
But the point is that at this point in time, it's pretty clear that the motherfucker's a U.S. asset. I don't think he's a Russian asset. Because again, oh, by the way, what have we done in regards to Ukraine? Oh, that's really sad. By the way, we're not giving you any money. And oh yeah, that's right. The money we did give you runs out on the 30th. I'm sorry. We hope for the best for you. You know, if you can go ask the EU, maybe they can give you some more. But unfortunately, we're just not going to be able to give you any more. Oh, I wonder why we did that. Maybe it doesn't have anything to do with a potential agreement, backdoor agreement with the fucking Russians. Oh, the same Russians that are still using the port in Syria without any complaint by the United States? The U.S. has not voiced any concern to the fact that the Russians still have an agreement with the current Syrian government for that port. It's a 20-year lease, by the way. And it's due for renegotiation in 10 years. I could honestly speaking, I could assume Bashar al-Assad is fucking pissed. He's probably like, motherfucker, why are you still working? Sir, we're gonna ask you really nicely to go back to your room. You don't want to know when we don't. You don't want to see when we don't ask this. Anyways, real quick, I need to get ready to go do trucks. I also need to do my call-in, so let's
1 moment. So
give it a second.
All right, 56 minutes in.
Dale, you did actually miss it yesterday. That space was fucking wild. I fucking lost my shit.
What was the main topic? I assume more Israel-Iran stuff.
Well, yeah, but the dumb fuck, like when he brought up the whole fucking money thing with Israel, which I actually need to run the fucking numbers and do a Gantt chart and everything for the fucking numbers involving the money that the U.S. has given to Israel over the years. But it's like the conservative number is 3-1, the conservative number that I've seen, and it's like, I'm sorry, but if you don't think that's a good investment, I don't know what to fucking tell you. And then his argument ended up just falling apart, and it devolved into, oh, so all they're good at doing is designing things to kill people. And I'm like, brother, do you know what radar is? like I brought up radar, and he had no idea how to fucking respond to that. It was hilarious. Friggin' Vered lost her shit. She was laughing so hard.
Who's that?
Well, it was nice for the British to really pioneer the technology.
Well, no, that's it. That's the thing, is that radar was developed for purposes of war. But at the same time, it gave us the ability to do so many things and to study so many different phenomena. It's unreal. But then, what did radar lead to?
I assume
Let's see
many
here.
things,
We got Doppler.
So...
We got Doppler radars for weather monitoring. We got microwave ovens that are based off of radar technology.
Yep. And I'm looking
And if I remember correctly, aren't televisions also kind of based off of something that had to do with radar?
Yep. But here's
the cathode ray tube.
Here's the number one technology involved with radar. GPS.
Oh, that was all satellites.
And what do? They
Microwave radiation.
They utilize the same tech as radar to triangulate your position.
Interesting.
Oh, by the way, who developed GPS?
We did.
It was Israel.
I was under the impression GPS was a DARPA thing.
No, it was a joint venture. It was a joint venture between DARPA and Israel. And what happened is that DARPA had developed a version of it that ran basically analog. It was basically an analog version, but the modern form of GPS that would eventually be fully adopted was developed by the Israeli side of the project. So it's like, yeah, okay, but like, oh, it's only good. They only design things that are good for killing people, and it's like, well, yeah, you can't get to point A to point B without Israel, so go fuck yourself.
I think it's kind of funny how the first major conflict to really use GPS was the Gulf War.
Yes.
The first Gulf War?
Yes.
Yeah.
Did it play a major factor in it?
Well,
Oh, yeah,
hardly
it was-
any of our forest has gotten lost in the desert, so yeah.
Fair enough.
Yep, that was the main contributing factors that allowed units to triangulate their positions very easily and coordinate attacks to the point where the Battle of Eastings literally developed into a shit show initially because units were crossfiring each other very heavily. And then once command and control was reestablished with GPS, they were able to start coordinating their lines of fire, and it turned into a turkey shoot.
Speaking of the micro soldering.
Thank God it's not humid out right now because this would be terrible out.
You lucky schmuck.
I hate living in North Korea sometimes.
Indeed.
No, I'm gonna make that joke from now on. God, North Korea sucks.
You know, I was just thinking about that scene from the movie In the Army now, there towards the end, where they had to use a laser designator to destroy those Scud missiles.
I'm unfamiliar with that movie.
Yeah, I can't direct it.
Let me put it to you this way, it was the very first movie where Pauly Shore cut his hair.
Oh dear. All you had to say is Pauly Shore, and I lose like 80% of my interest. But
Oh, fuck you. That was a good movie.
I have
My
no
two
idea.
favorite Pauly Shore movies, Son-in-Law, In the Army Now. I haven't seen Encino Man, but I heard that one was pretty good. But I'll also say, though, if it wasn't for Pauly Shore, Brendan Fraser probably would have never got his career off the ground.
Very fair enough. What was that one Pauly Shore? Was it Biodome? Was that or Bio? Was it Biodome? I'm thinking of.
Biodome.
Yeah, it was Biodome.
Yeah, it's Biodome.
Yeah. That movie kind of soured me on Pauly Shore a little.
Yeah, that one really wasn't his best one.
Fair enough.
But don't let one bad movie spoil you on an actor.
Fair enough. I didn't know he also had a hand in getting Brendan Fraser his
Who do you think played the Encino Man?
Right. Brendan Fraser?
Yep. Yep.
Fair enough, I guess.
You know,
that's
I
one
think
good
it
thing.
would have been fucking hilarious if they'd have had Pauly Shore in The Mummy.
Oh God.
And you know what's funny about him is he always acts like the stereotypical stoner Californian, but I've never seen him once light up a joint in a movie.
Yeah. Well, replacing Brendan Fraser with Pauly Shore in the Mummy, that would be one way.
No. I'm talking about having him co-star with him.
Well, all right, that's less intolerable. Still, I don't think that would be a. I don't think that's a Pauly Shore type of movie. If I remember correctly, the first Mummy movie was trying to actually kind of, take itself seriously. And most Pauly Shore movies are not trying to take themselves seriously.
You know, it's really funny.
What?
I'm loving the fact that we brought up Brendan Fraser
Yes.
because who do you think my favorite actor as a kid was?
Brendan Fraser?
Yeah.
Oh, hey, I don't blame you. He was a good actor.
This is a Brendan Fraser appreciation podcast.
No, I absolutely fucking love the guy.
Yeah, same here.
Well, here's the thing, is The Mummy, like, the first time I ever watched it, I was like maybe 6 or 7, Terrified the shit out of me.
Are
Watched
you
it again,
too?
Same here.
watched it again like a year later, and I just fell in love with it.
I think this is a thing that's like universal throughout people. Like between like 38 and like 20 now, that like they all saw The Mummy at least once as a small child. It scared the shit out of them, and then they saw it again and they really loved it. Cause yeah,
It was a great movie.
it was. And yeah,
I can't get over that Brendan Fraser actually played George of the Jungle.
here's
Oh
a,
yeah.
here's a question. What did you
Now,
think
that
of,
was hilarious.
yeah? What did you think of The Mummy
Oh.
Returns?
Well, that
I
one was
love
pretty
all-
good.
Yeah.
The only one I really didn't care that much for was the third one because it kind of
Yeah, it didn't really have much to do with the others.
exactly.
Also, The Mummy Returns had I believe it was the first movie that had The Rock in it.
It was the second, The Mummy Returns.
Yeah.
It was it was Dwayne Johnson's big movie break.
Yeah.
Well, no, his big movie break was Scorpion King.
Yeah. It was. Mummy
Well, hold
Returns was his debut.
up. If I remember correctly, The Mummy Returns come out first,
Yes.
and then
No,
you
it
had the Scorpion King movies.
Yes.
No,
So,
it didn't.
yeah. The Mummy Returns came out first, and then
Because the Scorpion Kings were
it was a spin-off.
spin-offs
Yeah.
of the Mummy series.
So
Hold on.
yeah. So The Mummy Returns was his debut. And like, hey, people liked it, but it was only after his second movie, The Scorpion King, was his big breakout into like more mainstream. Because The Mummy Returns wasn't. It was kind of like a B movie, whereas WWE put a lot of money into The Scorpion King to make it, to make it a lot more mainstream. And
Oh my
that's kind
god,
of
it
where
did? Oh, what?
Yeah.
It did come out. What?
and that's how he kind of broke out into the mainstream.
May 4th, 2001. When did Scorpion King come
I
out?
think 2002.
2002,
I know it came out in 2002. I'm looking at the date.
Yeah.
April 17th.
Oh, interesting. So
Okay, that's enough of a gap. Okay. Wow. I'm
No,
again. I thought. I will also admit, Scorpion King was also one of my favorite movies during that time period.
Nice.
Yep, the Scorpion takes place about 5,000 years before the Mummy.
Yeah.
I can do a little bit of programming here and there, but I'm not like.
I also remember that time period as a kid because back in the day, I was also very heavily invested in WWE at the time, and like they're shilling the shit out of the Scorpion King because they want everyone to see it, and around that time. So yeah, great period of time to be a kid.
And I visualize it.
Well, it's actually really funny because you guys want to know something.
I am not.
I don't even remember the woman's name, but the chick who played Imhotep's lover
Nefertiti.
in the Nefertiti,
Yeah.
the chick who played her, my biggest crush when I was a kid.
She was hard
Like,
as shit.
Hold on, give me a second and I'll find out who she is because
Yeah,
I'm
when
over here
I
looking
was a
stuff
kid,
up.
when I was a kid, like I had the biggest crush on her possible.
Yeah,
Well,
she was
I
hard
know
as
who
shit.
you're talking about. I did too. Okay, let me go down here and find the cast. Let's see here. Anaxuna. Oh wait. No, wait, that wasn't
No.
Nefertiti. That was the Noxuna Moon.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Because if you remember, it was Brendan Fraser's wife in the movie that was Nefertiti.
Oh yes.
And Anaxuna Moon's actress Patricia Corolla Velasquez, some long ass Spanish name.
Oh, so she's Latina.
Alright, my other
5'8.5" tall.
No, she's Venezuelan.
I didn't realize she was Spanish.
Yeah.
processor, right?
Well, that would explain why she was so hot.
Well, no, she looks Tunisian to me.
Yeah, like she looks much more brown in like an Egyptian or North African way than like brown.
Yeah,
in, like,
I
a
thought she was
Mexican
North
way.
African.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of pissed off how, like, in the third movie, they didn't bring back Rachel Weisz.
Was she the one who played Brendan Fraser's wife?
Evelyn.
Oh yes, yeah. Yeah, the less said about the third movie, the better.
Well,
John
not
Harris
necessarily
was-
bad, but like,
Well, do you
John-
know why? Do you know why they didn't? She didn't come back. Are you aware?
no. Was it
Why?
a money dispute?
Oh, it was a massive money dispute. So Brendan Fraser, he absolutely loved, I should say, he absolutely loved the Mummy series. So he actually took a pay cut on the third movie just because he wanted to do the movie. And then she came in and she found out on the side that Brendan had taken that pay cut, and so then she went and demanded more money. And so then she had a huge falling out. And then they had to recast her because she refused to do the movie.
Maria Bello was her name.
That's a shame.
Yeah, but at the same time, I forget the name of the chick that they recast her with, but she did well.
Maria Bello.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, she did well. I liked her. Now the problem is because of how much CGI they used in that movie. Like the problem is that there was so much CGI at a certain point in the Mummy that it was just like, holy shit, dude.
I've been learning this stuff.
I don't care what anybody says. Arnold Vosloo, damn good actor.
Yeah, maybe it was just because I was a kid at the time, but I thought the CGI in the Mummy looked pretty damn cool at the time.
Oh no, it was good. It was just when you put too much CGI in a movie, it tends to be a little overbearing for most people,
Right.
and that's why it wasn't received very well.
Yeah.
Here's one for you. You know what's the first?
Fucking God.
Well, here's a fun little fact for you. Do you know what was the first television series to make extensive use of CGI was?
No.
Huh.
Babylon 5.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That makes sense.
You know what was one of the first movies to use anything CGI on a big scale?
Oh, Star Trek.
The Last Starfighter.
Oh, The Last Starfighter. Okay, yeah.
Makes
Yeah,
sense.
because Last Starfighter did come out before.
I got one more example for y'all.
No, The Last Starfighter was an 80s movie. The Star Trek The Motion Picture came out around the same time as the original Star Wars.
I thought Last Starfighter was in the 60s. Or am I
Nope,
thinking
the
of a
last-
different movie?
You're thinking of something different because The Last Starfighter came out in the mid 80s.
Can I get a better one than a Wolf?
What am I thinking
Oh,
of then?
Oh. Oh, here's also another one for you. You remember the movie Escape from New York?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, you remember the scene where Snake was flying into New York City on that glider?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And those computer wireframes that they had of the city he was flying into? You know how they did that?
Oh.
They took a small scale model, painted it black, then put glow-in-the-dark tape on the outlines of those buildings, and filmed it that way.
Ah, that makes sense.
Interesting.
Yeah, I know it's generally a pretty useful trick that they do in Hollywood. You know, just make a small scale model and film it up close, and it looks basically real. It's pretty good.
That's what they did in the Godzilla movies.
Yep. Well, if it works, it works.
And I'll tell you this too, by the time they got around to the mid 80s, when they got into the Heisei era, the miniature models and stuff, they looked really damn good for a Japanese movie at the time.
Oh,
What now?
Shit.
Fun fact, since you mentioned Japanese movies around the 80s, did you know that the only movie that they ever built an actual castle and then burnt it down for the movie was a Japanese movie?
you say that
Yeah.
again, please?
Yeah, the only movie ever where they actually built an actual castle to scale and then burnt it down was a Japanese movie. In the 80s.
Not surprised.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Very
forget.
good-
I forget what it is.
It's
I forget what the
Ran.
movie is. Oh,
Ran.
oh yeah. Yeah.
Excellent movie. It's basically a Japanese retelling of King Lear, and like some of the largest battle scenes you'll ever see in any movie.
Oh yeah. Oh dude, they went full scale with it. It was fucking ridiculous.
Yes. Excellent.
One of my
excellent
favorite
movies.
mecha. I know one of my favorite mecha. One of my favorite mecha movies that came from Japan during that time was Gunhead. I mean, the set designs off of Gunhead and the props and everything were top notch. Story, on the other hand, I think they hired the lowest bidder to do the dubbing and they fucked it up.
Yeah.
All right, you guys ready to go again?
Yeah, ready to go.
Let me take a drink real quick.
No worries.
Oh.
Well, honestly, I might consider. I think we should leave some of the movie chat inside because it's interesting talk.
Yeah, no, of course. Just
Cheers.
use it as an intermission, like intermission. Please wait, and then roll like a 10-second gap between the two sides. But anyways, just bleep out anything like
Yeah, I'm definitely
to
gonna
do with me.
Yeah, I am definitely gonna cut. As always, gonna cut out your call in and shit.
Yeah. But anyways,
Yeah.
So-
on a show where we say fat so much, definitely don't want to dox anyone.
yeah, seriously, of course. But so what we end up having with this situation in the Middle East right now is this is potentially, if it is handled the way, like the after effect is handled the way that it needs to be handled, could end up being the biggest dub that the United States has ever taken. Like, this could gut the European ability to do anything in the world for generations. And mind you, and it's something in this, as I'm reading through this book, it's something that I have to be reminded of every so often. And I'm glad that they remind you in this book here.
Mm-hmm.
But these families, there are these families in the world that have existed for ages. And I have to remember this because I'm a distant cousin of multiple royal families due to the families that I come from. Like, I can confirm this shit, by the way, people. Like, this isn't me just talking on my ass. Like, my family trees are traced back far enough. Like, I know this shit for fact. We've got the church record. That's how extensive the research has been. We have church records. If you can't, and Dale, this is something I will give the church credit for.
Mm-hmm.
The church taking records of births is a huge fucking thing.
Yes.
And a very important thing.
Yes.
But I know these families exist because I exist. Now, am I some powerful fucking aristocrat from fucking England or from France or Germany or whatever? No. I'm just some fucking corn-fed motherfucker in Ohio, United States. But if I exist, then you know damn well that these motherfuckers exist over here.
Mm-hmm.
Period in the story. So, at the end of the day, these people are the problem. And one of the things that they bring up as part of the whole communist mantra is the communists, the revolutionaries, and the reactionaries have the same goal. For two different reasons, but they have the same goal. Destroy normal people's ability to build wealth.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's their whole thing. One side wants fucking neo-feudalism, the other side wants neo-communism. Like, that's literally their whole fucking thing. So at the end of the day, we're all in the sights of these people, period, in the story. Now, then you take into account the fact that if we gave them access to the oil or to the energy reserves of Iran, we let them install the Shah, we let them topple the current government, we let them do whatever the fuck they want, they would be able to continue spreading their influence and their power for the next 100 years. Well, why give them the opportunity to fucking do it if we can just handle it ourselves? Yeah, it might suck. It might be annoying to think that we're getting involved in more conflict. But at some point in time, the consideration has to be made that maybe, just maybe, you need to take a small L by getting into a small conflict to get the biggest dubs. People have to kind of start coming to terms, basically.
To answer your question in the chat, Stoner, probably.
I'm gonna say no.
No.
The elites that I'm referring to and the elites you're thinking are two different groups of people.
Oh. So you're not saying that those things don't happen, just those specific people don't do them. It's another group of people doing that.
No.
Fair enough.
Yeah, absolutely. No, because there's always going to be degenerates.
And
there's always going to be.
For the record, for those who are listening, Stoner's question said, don't those elites also practice satanic/dark occultic rituals for money and power? For those wondering what we're talking about.
No, that's the thing, is the types. So here's the thing: the types that fall into those groups, and I'm going to refer to them as lodges here.
Mm-hmm.
The British.
Yeah, good choice of word.
The British term for it would be clubs, by the way.
Yes.
But the lodges that those people are a part of, they tend to be the people that are on the outside of the elite circles. They tend to be the disparates. They tend to be the destitute, et cetera, because they get engaged in this shit because of some form of desperation or some sort of depravity that they have, and the elite pushes those guys to the side. They're on the periphery. The aristocratic core that I'm talking about, they don't participate in that bullshit because they don't need to. They don't feel the need to get involved with that bullshit. Just like with the whole shit with Epstein, for example, the aristocratic core isn't involved in that. It's all the periphery motherfuckers that are involved in that shit.
With the exception of Prince Andrew.
But Prince Andrew is the periphery. He's the perfect example of the periphery.
What about those?
Andrew was never going to sit on the throne.
What about
Diana? Go ahead. Sorry, Stoner.
Well, what about those schmucks that were allegedly on Epstein's client list and all the shit that allegedly happened on his island, and in addition to some of the mess that's coming out on P. Diddy? Isn't this all kind of connected together?
Okay, well, first off, you have to understand. Again, these people are the periphery. That you have to be able to segment out the population and understand who's who. There's different cliques. Think of high school. You have all the different lunch tables that each different group of people sits at. The group of people that are in control of the school and of the student body don't associate with the weird guys that are off looking at porn magazines in the bathroom. Because why? Why bother? I can just as easily go down the hallway, find me a sweet little hottie, and fucking take her home with me. Like that's the thing, is the people who engage in this shit are not the ones that are in power necessarily. They're the ones that are looking for power. Associating with Epstein was only a good thing if you were looking to benefit from Epstein. That's the point. that's why people who had actual power, like if you look at the people on his client list, there are some notable names. But the problem is once you start looking into those noticeable names, most of them are controversial figures to begin with. Most of them are people that have been on the outs with their families or with their governments for years at that point in time. So, again, the aristocratic core doesn't care about shit. Again, let me just put it this way. The aristocratic core doesn't need to fuck kids. They can literally just order one of the maids to strip down in front of fucking God and everybody and let them rail. That's the type of people I'm talking about.
Fair enough.
And coming from a degenerate like myself, that is fucked up.
Indeed.
Well, welcome to money, influence, and power, bud. Like that's how it fucking works. Like you look at the situation in Buckingham Palace, for example. Andrew was never going to sit on the throne, ever. Charles was ahead of him.
But
Charles was ahead of him.
Charles is also pretty old, though. Couldn't he die and then, in theory, like be replaced by Andrew, or?
No, William's in line then.
Ah, fair enough.
It would take Andrew getting rid of Charles, William, and Harry in order to be able to sit on the throne.
Didn't Harry kind of abandon all that to, move to America and live with that truly awful woman?
That's the thing is because they're on the outs with each other, so
Right.
so there could be a high likelihood at this point in time. Will Harry ever sit on the throne? No. Now, would he be an emergency heir if the circumstances required it, or a regent? Yes.
But
he's still in the line of succession, technically speaking.
Doesn't marrying a commoner under British royal law doesn't that exclude you?
William already destroyed that.
Oh, he did?
Yeah, his wife was a commoner. Oh. He already destroyed that. He's still Duke.
Fair enough.
Yeah, no, that, and mind you, Elizabeth had been wanting to get rid of that protocol. Funny enough, Charles's wife, Camilla, I believe is her name. Mm-hmm. She was the one that wanted that rule, that protocol maintained. Funny enough, which is why Elizabeth played the game and then proceeded to be like, no, I'm perfect. It's perfectly fine that he wants to marry her. I forget William's wife's name. She's a sweetheart. I love her.
I got an intelligent question. How the fuck did these people come about being kings and queens and shit to begin with?
I assume at some point they were in charge of tribes, and then those tribes conquered other tribes, and at some point they became kings.
Yeah, dude. Okay, first off, you have to understand, House Windsor, or House Brunswick as it was originally called, replaced House Tudor.
Right.
And then House Windsor, or House Brunswick, became House Windsor, and House Windsor is the current ruling family.
I think that Stoner's question was more okay, the first royal family, how did they become, at some point there was a time where there was no royal family, and then they became a royal family. I think he was asking more about that, how did that come about?
Exactly, that's what I want to know. How the hell did that happen? I mean, what happened? Just some regular caveman just said, ooh, me king, and that's what started it?
Well, no, so what truly started it was feudalism can draw its direct lineage with Charlemagne, because Charlemagne established his kingdom after unifying the northern Austro-Italic tribes of northern Italy. Right. Everybody's like, oh, Charlemagne was a Frank. No, he wasn't. He was an Ostrogoth.
Yes.
He was from the city of Ravenna, by the way, which is great. I love. Oh God, it's been on my bucket list to visit Ravenna. But the point is that he united the several tribes of the Ostrogoths together, and then this is where the Ostrogoths had adopted the Roman style very heavily, the Roman culture, the Roman way of life, et cetera, et cetera. They had assimilated into it very easily and very quickly, which actually pissed the Romans that were still left off, because they were like, wait, so you motherfuckers are actually capable of being normal?
Yes. Well, I mean, didn't they then eventually call themselves the Holy Roman Empire later on? They even
Charlemagne's kingdom was I believe it was called Francia. Yeah. Was the original form. I believe it's Francia. Francia is how you say it. Francia then gets divided by his 5 sons. So Lombardy becomes its own thing, which is actually where I'm from, funny enough, on my mom's side. Lombardy becomes its own thing. Then you have East Francia, West Francia, Middle Francia, which then gets renamed Lotharingia, and then Saxony. But the kingdom was divided by his sons, and then they went to war against each other, which the majority of the royal families of that time period can draw lineage from those 5 sons, thus can draw lineage from Charlemagne himself. So that's the main thing, is a lot of the royal families that exist even today can draw that lineage to Charlemagne. So there's that, because Charlemagne was the first ordained feudal lord by what would eventually become the papacy, it's kind of, that's where it comes from. Mm-hmm. This is why feudalism never really took off in several other places.
You know, this is kind of off topic, but it is a political question. One that I've been kind of struggling with personally. What is your opinions on these neo-monarchists that are coming about nowadays, especially those that are very, very critical of our modern democratic/liberal societies?
Which neo-monarchist specifically?
Monarchist, not Marxist.
No, that's what I said. Which neo-monarchist specifically are you referring? Because there are different factions.
See, it's that one.
Like
Curtis Yarvin, I think.
Yarvin, he's not necessarily a monarchist. He's more like America needs a CEO, basically. He
not huge.
Okay, so
yeah, he's not necessarily a monarchist, but
let me explain. So there's 2 sides to this coin. The problem is that both sides lead to the same shit, and that's the problem. You have the people who are sick and tired of the bureaucracy, that are sick and tired of listening to a bunch of administrators who have no idea what they're talking about, talk about things, and they want to get rid of the bureaucracy. Now, the problem is that you can't just get rid of the bureaucracy, because then you have what happens in China. Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't want to go through the warlord period, personally speaking.
Right.
Then there are the actual neo-monarchists, the people who do want to institute a divine rule. And, well, again, I'm smelling a lot of scones and tea when it comes to most of them, because a lot of them talk about Anglo-Saxon traditions. And it's like, I wonder who you're working for. That's all it is. It's 2 different groups of people. One side is pissed off at the bureaucracy. The other one is just a bunch of fucking British agents. And mind you, they're unpaid. They're doing it for free because they just want to push an idea.
Well, have one thing to say. You do have great warlord potential.
Yes, potential. I would rather that potential go unrealized, personally speaking.
Fair enough.
But no, that like the majority of these people, they're just a bunch of fucking idiots who think like. Actually, let me go ahead and let me actually bring up Marx real quick.
Boo.
Where is it? Ah, yes.
Boo.
I'm just gonna read one of the sections of the book.
All right.
The naked, shameless, and brutal bourgeoisie. Like his aristocratic mentor Urquhart, Marx had a tendency to romanticize the idyllic feudal past and to vilify middle-class culture in terms reminiscent of Young Englanders. Young England was a reactionary movement in England that still persists to this day, by the way. That is not to say that Marx approved the feudal order. He clearly opposed it. Nonetheless, Marx plainly saw the bourgeoisie order or the bourgeois order as worse. Marx imagined the Middle Ages as offering, at the very least, some comforting illusion of a harmonious natural order based on patriarchal relations, chivalry, and faith. The money-grubbing bourgeoisie, on the other hand, had stripped away those illusions, leaving only naked, shameless, direct, brutal exploitation, said Marx. He spelled it out in the Communist Manifesto. Marx wrote, "The bourgeoisie, whatever it has got the upper hand, has put an end to all feudal, patriarchal, and idyllic relations. It has pitilessly torn asunder the motley feudal ties that bound man to his natural superiors, and has left remaining no other nexus between man and man than naked self-interest, than callous cash payment. It has drowned the most heavenly ecstasies of religious fervor, of chivalrous enthusiasm, or Philistine sentimentalism in the icy water of egotistical calculation. It has resolved personal worth into exchange value, and in place of the numberless indefensible chartered freedoms, has set up that single unconscionable freedom, free trade. In one word, for exploitation veiled by religious and political illusions, it has substituted naked, shameless, direct, brutal exploitation." And that's the whole thing, is that at the end of the day, these types, they think, and thus they be communists. It's just, we'd rather be communists with a king rather than with a chairman. And that's the thing, is like at the end of the day, like most of this discussion comes down to, we have the ability to gain power, thus we must gain power, and we have this ideal, so we're going to enforce this ideal upon the rest of the people. Like that's all this shit.
I just feel it needs to be said when Mike was reading that passage, quoting Marx, bemoaning how the idyllic feudal life was reduced to nothing but nothing but numbers under this bourgeois system. You know what those numbers got me? Fucking air conditioning. Alright? Fuck the feudal way of life. Alright? I'll take the numbers and rather than being outside in fucking 40 degrees Celsius weather. Fuck that. I'll take the AC.
Yeah, fuck communism because I like food and I like air conditioning.
Yes.
Well, no, it's even beyond that. It's so much bigger than just the simple, jests and memes. At the end of the day, what they want to do is they want to remove forward mobility for the average person.
Mm-hmm.
Because here's the thing, is at the end of the day, if you are subjected to, you're only allowed to work a specific job, you only have a certain amount of resources that are allocated to you on a daily basis, and you're only allowed to do certain things that are approved, where's the mobility? Where's the ability to be better?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what it comes down to. It's not about technology. It's not about resources. It's about the ability to improve upon.
Yeah. What's that famous Russian joke from the Soviet era where they said they pretend to pay us and we pretend to work?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what's funny is that was actually one of Tom Clancy's books.
Based. Do you remember
Red
which
Storm.
one?
I think it was in Red Storm Rising.
I'm unfamiliar with that one.
Well, and that's the whole thing, is that that's what they want to destroy. And Iran, and you can sit back and claim that this has nothing to do with Iran and that this has nothing to do with the Middle East. It absolutely does. Again, as we established earlier, BP, one of the largest fucking corporations in the United Kingdom, was birthed in Iran. Like, you can't argue it. Like, if you want to try to argue it, go the fuck ahead. I'm going to call you retarded. So, at the end of the day, preventing the British from gaining an upper hand in Iran and reinstalling the Shah and having free access to Iranian energy, yeah, that's a dub. That's a massive dub. Because what is... I'm going to... Actually, hold on. I'm gonna. Oh shit! I don't want to try to have to find it right now. Trump put out a tweet talking about how the peace deal made it so that China could buy oil from Iran, and then he added in that statement saying how China could also benefit from buying energy from the United States.
Yeah,
that's the whole fucking point. Is it's us gaining an immutable advantage on the world in the world market by creating the conditions where other people are not just trading with these guys over here, they're also trading with us. And that's the whole point. If the British had the ability to get into Iran and then proceed to monopolize that market, then you have to buy everything through the British.
Yeah.
By the way,
one question. So, being that the British wanted to install the Shah, do you think they actually would have had the ability to if America just was completely uninvolved in this conflict between Israel and...
Yes.
How, like...
Because of their assets in Israel.
So you think Israel would have been able to completely by themselves topple the government and install basically a puppet government in Iran?
Yes. Now, would it have been in the fashion that it was? No, not at all. It would have been a full blown fucking expedition. The Israeli paras would have been dropping into Iran. There would have been ground war in Iran.
Do you think is that a war that could be won? Because, correct me if I'm wrong, but you can't generally overthrow a government with just airstrikes, And does Israel have the does this country of 6 million people have enough ground forces to completely conquer this other country of 90 million people?
So what it would require, because the British wouldn't put forces in. What they would do is they would loan them the aircraft that would be able to do it. And so what you would end up having is the British would go in, they would tell the Israelis, hey, we know where Khomeini is, you're going to go in and kill him. They would drop in a battalion of paras. That battalion, if it lived or fucking died, doesn't matter to the British. But that battalion secures the area around the bunker and then proceeds to fucking cut their way into the bunker and fucking shoot Khomeini.
Right. But
and then at that point in time, you have a situation where the British can then waltz in with the Shah. Again, he was making public appearances for a fucking reason, and then proceed to install it.
But so just because Khomeini is dead, like how does that get from Khomeini is dead now? How do they just put this other guy in here and then suddenly he's the leader of the country?
Because they would they would have appealed to the sensibilities of the people to end the violence.
And you think?
Well, again, like here's the thing: is that it was very clear that there were British assets already on the ground. That much was clear. Like you look at the reports that were coming out of Iran for the past few years, like since October 7th, 2023. You look at the reports that were coming out of Iran, that there was this massive shift in the public perception. What is the secret weapon of the British government?
Propaganda.
Color revolution.
Okay. There you go, Dale. That's the secret weapon of the British government, is color revolutions. It was very clear that they were trying to gin up a color revolution, and they probably were working on paying off and buying off the military to get the military on side so that they could commit a color revolution. And then they install the Shah. Well, we took the wind out of those sails there. Because now they can't color revolution. They just can't. They can't do it. There's no feasible way for them to pull it off because Khomeini's still alive. The military hasn't fucking thrown down its arms. It's still given the reports that I've seen, they're still manning their fucking posts. They're still there fucking doing their thing. We wiped out the IRGC, which here's the thing, and this is what I think happened. Is that the U.S. has assets in Israel, just like how the British have assets, and our assets got the Israelis to work with us rather than work with the British. And thus we focus on the IRGC, and we focus on the nuclear stuff, and that benefits us more than it benefits the British.
But don't color revolutions generally require, like, a rather divided populace? Like, my understanding is during the war, most of Iran was united against the attackers. Like that seems like the worst time to attempt a color revolution. Yes. When
Well, no, the point was that they were trying, because the Shah had been active right after October 7th. Mm-hmm. He had been they had started parading him around. And they were trying to gin up the popular support of the Shah in Iran. He wasn't speaking to the people of Europe. He wasn't speaking to the people of Israel. He wasn't speaking to the people of the United States. He was speaking to the people of Iran. And at the end of the day, what I think they didn't realize is that people want a new government. They don't want the Shah.
Right.
And that's the point. So I'm gonna point this out, and this is something that a lot of people will contest all day and night. But you know what? I'm gonna point it out anyways. Iranians are Persian.
Yes.
They're not Bedouins.
Correct.
Persians value themselves. Persians actually have some discernment. Oh, and by the way, they have the experience and the lived memory of what the British were like. Mm-hmm. They know what the people of Iran went through with the British, with the exploitation.
Right.
So, do you think that a British puppet is going to sing true with the Iranian people, or do you think that they're going to be like, nah, we good?
But that's why I'm saying I don't think that such a color revolution would succeed, because like they all hate the Shah.
But it doesn't mean that the British aren't going to make the attempt. That's the point.
Right. But my main point was about this was like if they make the attempt and it fails, then like.
Well, that's the thing. That's also the other thing, and here's the other point: is that if the U.S. got involved in a ground war in Iran, it would actually provide the impetus for said color revolution.
Right.
Us actually deploying troops would be to the advantage of the British. Us not deploying troops is not in the advantage to the advantage of the British.
Right.
So.
But
again,
the point I was trying to make was like, assuming that no American involvement, it seems like, I mean, sure they would try to install the Shah, but it seems that attempt would fail miserably because everyone hates the Shah, and you can't color revolution a very hated figure into office.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely and you're absolutely correct in that regard. But I'm also going to point out. How long did it take them to color revolution Russia?
Which time?
You know what time I'm referring to.
Fair. So you're referring to
the Bolshevik Revolution. The Bolshevik Revolution.
Yeah.
They started the preparation for it back when Catherine the Great was still in. Like it took them pretty much like half a century to get all the pieces in play. Like, it wasn't a fast process by any metric whatsoever. But again, like, at the end of the day, with communication technology, it allows them to get pieces into play a lot quicker than you might think in the modern day. Because look at Georgia. Look at what happened in Georgia, in Tbilisi.
Mm-hmm.
They have been attempting to remove the government of Georgia for years now.
Yeah.
And when all of a sudden the police and the military and a few other groups didn't just step aside, they were like, "Oh shit, what the fuck's going on? Why are they still defending these people? Fuck." Like Kazakhstan. They tried the color revolution in Kazakhstan. What happened? The Kazakhstan government asked the fucking Russians to come in, and the VDV came in and said, "Ooh, we get to have fun today."
Mm-hmm.
Belarus, same thing. Fucking Wagner was in Belarus training with the fucking with the Belarusian government at the time, and the Belarusians were like, "Hey, Wagner, we got this big ass fucking protest coming, and we don't know what the hell's gonna happen." They're like, "We got you, bro." Like the thing is that the communications technology, and one of the things, and this is my personal take, color revolutions are losing their value. They are losing their potency because of communications technology. Because at the end of the day, if the men in the uniforms are seeing the shit and they're like, "Yeah, that's retarded," and they keep seeing it over and over and over again, they start getting the idea of like, "Oh, somebody's actually trying to do something." And so they actually stand and fight. Whereas previously, color revolutions were super fucking effective because communications technology wasn't there. And so, word spread slowly over the course of time.
Mm-hmm.
And so it allowed the ideas to percolate more and more and more and more. It also matters who you're infiltrating. Yeah. The Persian culture, I don't think, is as susceptible to a color revolution as, say, the Iraqi or the Saudi Arabian or, hell, even the Turkish.
Right. Here's a question for you. A bit off topic, but since we're on the topic of color revolutions, do you think the George Floyd riots were a British color revolution against the United States?
Yes and no. Were they British? No. Was it a color revolution? Yes.
Who orchestrated that?
Okay, so that color revolution, real quick, pause. I need to go see what the fuck is going on with my gate.
All right.
Yeah, sorry. I'm sorry, I'm still at work.
No worries.
But no, great question, by the way. Love you.
You know, I never thought about the George Floyd stuff being an American color revolution.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it has a lot of the hallmarks of color revolutions in other, looked very Maidan-esque times.
Oh yeah, and speaking of that, I'm placing bets. When will Texas start burning after the Carmelo Anthony trial?
Do you think he's going? Do you think he's? Well, it's Texas, so.
Oh, he's fucked.
Yeah.
He's fucked. No. Have you seen the video?
No, I thought they haven't released it.
Yeah, no, it's out.
All right, I'll have to find that and take a look.
Carmelo Anthony fucking murdered that kid hard.
Yeah.
Like it's bad. Like it looks really bad. Like
Those details, please, because I'm kind of busy at the moment.
Yeah.
I would have to try to find it again.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, he's going to jail.
Yeah, and the thing you have to understand, Stoner, it's Texas. They're not gonna put up with that shit like New York City would, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
They would beat the shit out of those protests. Like the cops would come in and beat the ever living shit out of any of those protesters, as they should.
Unless it's in Austin.
Yeah.
Real quick. I'm back and ready.
Excellent.
So the George Floyd protests, yes, were in fact a color revolution, but it wasn't the color revolution that you know of. See, here's the problem: is that a lot of NGOs are linked to a bunch of different groups, and what this color revolution, this was an internal color revolution here in the United States. It wasn't an external color revolution.
So it was basically like a
problem.
USAID type style color revolution?
No, USAID is all external, basically.
Oh, right.
This was California trying to get rid of key players around the country in order to reassert its political dominance over the country. That's what it was. Because here's the point. Notice how you didn't have protests at the White House. You didn't have protests at the in California nearly as much. You didn't have these places where the key players who were actually trying to push something. It was all the other places that were getting hit the hardest by these protests.
Mm-hmm.
So at the end of the day, if I had to put money on it and you start looking at where the money, because here's the thing, is I don't care how you want to spin it. Not that many people donated money to Black Lives Matter.
Mm-hmm.
But let's look at the large donations that were given to that organization. And I bet you dollars to fucking donuts we can find the connections real quick.
Yeah.
The same thing with the ICE protests.
Mm-hmm.
Now, here's the thing. The No Kings protest, that was a foreign op.
Mm.
That's the foreign op. The ICE protests were ginned up as a internal thing. The No Kings protest, because notice how they had No Kings protests in Europe and Canada.
Yeah.
And, that also reminds me, how many people attended those No Kings protests? Because I haven't been able to find any reliable information on that.
Well, because all the video. So if you actually go and you look at video from the protests,
It's all boomers.
It's all zoomed in.
Yeah.
It's all zoomed in. And what that does is it insinuates that the crowds are bigger than they really are. But I will also point something out. As Dale just pointed out, a lot of the crowds in regards to that were older. By the way, the majority of the Anglophile population in the United States, they're on the older side.
Yeah. It was mostly
Damn
just people.
boomers.
It was mostly just people who still watch like TV news, like CNN and MSNBC, which is like
that
60
reminds me
plus.
that reminds me of something. I'm not going to say the VTuber's name, but she was telling a story where her grandfather, before he passed away, used to watch Fox News 24/7. But then when he started getting kind of frail, some of her more liberal-leaning family got power of attorney over him, and they were feeding him nothing but CNN and shit like that. And the VTuber said that before he passed away, they pretty much brainwashed that old man just by feeding him CNN and shit.
Very unfortunate. Yeah, left wingers cannot stand the fact that other people might watch. Like you can see various, there are tons and tons of Reddit posts you can find, assuming these are real and they're not just LARPing for updates. Of people talking about how they like use their basically how they use like their older parents like smart TVs to like block out Fox News and replace it with like gayer news sites or news channels and shit, and like stuff about them trying to deny their parents access to Fox News. I've never seen anyone on the right try to do that with like more left-wing parents and like their media consumption habits.
That's what you end up getting. Is what you end up getting with a lot of these people is that they are
they're controlled.
They're so desperate for control, it's unfucking real. But again, like most of these people are Anglophiles. Like 90% of them, they're just Anglophiles, and so they have this worldview that is like you notice how people who have an American worldview, they don't fucking vote Democrat anymore.
Yeah,
they don't. It's really funny. Like, it's actually really fucking diabolical, like, to think about. Because my family, for example, we don't give a fuck about Europe whatsoever. And mind you, used to vote Democrat across the board.
Yes.
My family, we were all Dixiecrats before the party went stupid.
Well, it's basically you only vote Democrat if you actively hate the country and want to harm it. That's really
nowadays.
That's the only type of person who now votes in the Democrat Party, and and when I say wants to harm it, I mean knowingly wants to harm it. Like, they want revenge against the country and they want it to suffer.
You kind of got to wonder now, and it kind of pains me to say this as a citizen of the old Confederacy, but I wonder how many of these people actually had ties to the old Confederate government, and they're doing all this stuff out of spite for the Union winning.
No, okay, so here's the thing, and I'm going to say this right now. It's not out of spite for the Union winning, except in one fucking regard. It's, you look at the key players, like, for example, Hillary Clinton. Where does Hillary Clinton hail from?
Somewhere up north.
Well, I know,
Arkansas, bro.
Yeah, Bill Clinton. Yeah,
I thought that was Bill. I knew Bill Clinton was from Arkansas, but I thought Hillary was from outside the South.
No, she's from Arkansas, bud. Pretty sure.
I thought she was originally from like New York, but I mean, her political dynasty comes from Arkansas.
Well, I'm fixing to fact check that.
Yeah, let me just.
Well, whatever. Point is that the political dynasty is from Arkansas.
Yeah.
And Arkansas was one of the refuges for loyalists that stayed in the U.S.
Interesting.
Yeah, she's from
following the revolution.
Yeah, she's from like
She was born in
Says
Chicago.
here she was born in Chicago.
But I think...
Oh, God, even... Holy shit, even worse. Fuck, no wonder why she's a fucking mad woman. Holy shit. Chicago. Oh, God, Chicago political machine is fucking ridiculous.
Yeah.
But the point is...
She grew up in Park Ridge.
Yeah, but I think what Mike's trying to say is that, like, her political life started in Arkansas, right?
Yeah, but the point is that she's an Anglophile through and through. The loyalist elements in Arkansas, like, you look at fucking Mike Huckabee and Sarah Huckabee, and across the board, they're all Anglophiles. Every single one of them. And across the board, you will find Anglophiles out of Arkansas all the fucking time. The same thing can be said about certain other places, like, for example, Massachusetts.
Ever heard of the Dixie Mafia?
Nope.
You know what I'm talking about, don't you, Warhound?
Yeah, I'm aware, guys.
What is that?
I'll send you a video on it. Forgotten History made a video on it not too long ago.
Fair enough.
But the point is that at the end of the day, these people, it wasn't a case of it was revenge for the Union winning. It was revenge for the U.S. staying a contiguous country. Because here's the thing, is it was in the British interest for the Confederacy to win. That was a British goal, was to split the United States. Now, yeah, you can bitch and whine and cry about, how Northerners mistreat Southerners and yada yada. Sorry, bud. The only Northerners that are mistreating Southerners are liberals. Oh, by the way, liberal Southerners are mistreating you too.
True.
Yeah, fuck those carpetbagging scallywags.
The North-South dynamic has completely fallen apart. It hasn't been a thing in fucking almost 100 years at this point in time. The problem is that people have latched onto the Civil War identity as a means of pushing that narrative. Oh, you're a terrible person because you hold lineage to these people. Even though, like, for example, Robert E. Lee, like when fucking idiots who have no idea what they're talking about start talking shit about Robert E. Lee, I laugh every fucking time. I'm like, you know who you're talking about in any way, shape, or form? He was a Confederate. He wanted slavery. And I'm like, he literally got disowned by his family for being anti-slave, you fucking idiot.
Yeah, he is on record saying that, like, if I can't remember the exact quote, but basically that if he had the ability to free every slave and preserve the Union, he would have done it, but he didn't.
Yeah.
Right, and interestingly enough, Lincoln, on the other hand, had an exact opposite quote where he basically said if he could preserve the Union, if the only option to preserve the Union was to allow slavery, he would take that as well. So.
It's the point the Corwin Amendment.
Yeah.
Again, the point is that when people are like, oh, the Civil War is about slavery, and I'm like, no, it was about economics and the British Empire wanting to split up the United States. That's what it was about.
I still have my doubts about that last part, but in regards to the
No, stop. Silence for a moment, because I'm gonna lose my shit on you. No.
Hey,
stop.
listen. I was trying to say something.
Stoner, I don't care, because you I have my doubts about that. Dude, who is the fucking nation that fucking supported the Confederacy? Who benefited the most from the Confederacy splitting from the Union and selling them their cotton?
Well, just because you say that doesn't mean that they would have maintained control.
Maintain control of what? They don't even maintain control of shit. They just wanted to split us up.
Well, I was under the impression...
They didn't want control of the South. They wanted you to sell your fucking shit to them and not to the Union.
That's where the confusion was coming from.
Like,
That's where the confusion was coming from.
It's not about control. It's about markets and trade. Kinetic warfare is literally the final form of financial warfare. Every war is financial in some form or fashion. In this case, it was about the South getting pissed that the U.S. government had put a tariff on cotton and other raw goods in order to prevent the the British from being able to buy up the supply of cotton and other raw goods that the North needed in order to be able to produce their goods.
I saw the Razor Fist video.
That was the whole point.
It's also worth noting, what was the thing that, like, before the U.S. The American Revolution, what was the thing that was most irritating the British about their American colonies? It was the fact that they were industrializing and weren't just shipping raw goods into Britain to be manufactured there.
Yep.
Right? That was one of the main reasons they tried to, put a squeeze on their own colony so that they just remain nothing but like a thing to suck resources out of.
Exactly.
Oh, that reminds me of something.
Mm-hmm. Right, so it kind of makes sense. It kind of makes sense then that they then support the one side that is basically just a resource economy, isn't industrialized, and its main source of revenue is shipping raw material to other industrialized states to be manufactured. Right? That's the only thing that the British ever wanted America to be, or any of their other colonies to be.
Mm-hmm. I'm posting another video for y'all to check out later.
All right.
I thought it was actually pretty decent and well made.
But no,
I mean, it's amazing at how divided we were even back then on whether to have independence or not.
Well, again, it's just a case of, like, we've always debated. We've always gone back and forth. I'm serious. Hey, pause here for a second. I got a guy walking up.
One moment.
But just to finish that thought, yeah, Stoner, like, yes, like the whole thing with the U.S. being divided. We're 50 fucking countries in one federation, bud. Of course we're gonna be divided.
Yes.
Dude, do you realize who you're talking to? Just because I talk slow doesn't mean I think slow.
Are you sure about that? I love you. You opened yourself up with that one. You opened yourself up.
Yeah, I love you too, you yellow-bellied damn Yankee.
Yeah, you're speaking to a fucking Cajun, bud. Hey, what's good, bud? Anyways. But getting us back on track.
Well, I do apologize about earlier. I just had a bit of a misunderstanding of what you were saying.
Well, that's fine. That's fine. Here's the thing, dude, is that at the end of the day, like, instead of making a comment like, I doubt that, ask, hey, could you expand on that and explain it further? Like, that's the key thing, is like, if you ask the question, then at that point in time, I know, okay, you just don't know, or you don't understand what I'm saying, versus you're just disregarding it. And it's like, but this is true. like this is the facts. Because here's the thing, and a lot of people don't understand this about the Civil War, is that the British were the only reason the Confederacy had the weaponry to fight the first year of the war.
And
because
French.
The number of, well, the French to a degree, yes, but the French did the number of Enfields that the British gave to the Confederacy was far outclassed the amount that of Chevaliers that the I believe that was the name of the musket that the French gave to the Confederacy. Now the French, if I remember correctly, did provide a bunch of artillery for the Confederacy, but eventually most of the artillery would be British as well. Like the British supplied the vast majority of the arms. Now, after the blockade was established, then at that point in time, the British and French were basically neutered from supplying to the Confederacy. But
check the chat. I just posted a nice, pretty picture.
All right. Did the Confederacy build the ironclad on its own, or was this supplied mostly by Europe?
I believe
the Virginia.
I think so. It was.
Yeah.
Was that the first ironclad?
Yeah.
There were two. Yeah, there were two famous ironclads during the Civil War: the CSS Virginia and then the USS Monitor.
Right. Oh, yeah.
The Monitor was the Union one.
Yeah.
The Virginia was built. It was built by the Confederacy under British supervision.
Uh-huh.
Also, I really do love this picture because it's really funny because I know where all this shit comes from. So when I was speaking about the weapons, so the majority of the rifle that was used by the Confederacy was the Mississippi 1841, which was a percussion conversion for old flintlock Mississippi rifles, which were fantastic conversions, to be completely frank. They were good rifles. Then you have the pattern 1853 Enfield, which was the musket that the British supplied to them, and basically a lot of the smaller Confederate formations would use Mississippis, and then the larger, more experienced formations, like for example, Stonewall Jackson's Virginia Corps, or Virginia Brigade, I should say. It wasn't really a corps; it was more of like a oversized brigade. That brigade utilized the Enfields, and then of course the Sharp rifle and the Springfield rifle 1861. Those were captured from the Union. A lot of those would have been captured, or the Springfield rifle 1861s predominantly would have been captured during the first raid of Harper's Ferry. And then, of course, you got the Spencer rifle, which the Spencer rifle, great rifle, by the way, a fantastic weapon.
It was one of the first repeaters, that and the Henry.
Well, the Spencer.
Hello?
No, I don't think the Spencer. I think the Spencer was a single shot rifle. It was a breech loader. I thought it was one of the first breech loaders.
Hold on, I'm fixing to double check everything. RIFL Spencer rifle. It was a repeater.
Oh, it was?
Yeah, the shells of it were loaded in the buttstock instead of in a tube under the barrel.
Oh, so it used this similar design to the Sharp rifle. Okay.
Well, hold on. I'm fixing to download a fucking words blueprint. Okay, back here. All right, here's the blueprint on how the Spencer rifle worked.
Yeah, and now we're
lever. Yeah, the lever was the trigger guard on it.
Okay, yeah. So this is literally just like the Sharp's rifle. Okay. Yeah, it's literally the same mechanism.
Wait, hold up. I think the Sharp's was a single shot.
No, the Sharp's rifle was a magazine fed as well.
No, it was a large bore, single shot, falling block, breech loader.
Oh, did I get them mixed up?
Mm-hmm.
I got them backwards. Okay, I got them backwards. All right, because I thought, so the Sharps rifle was the rolling block, and then the Spencer was the repeater. Okay.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of those. I heard a lot of those old timers from the Western era loved using the Sharps for buffalo hunting.
Oh yeah, no, they're great rifles. I've shot them before. But anyways, reeling it back in. I love our little tisms. But the point is that, you know, the British fingerprints were all over the U.S. Civil War, and the division that is promulgated in the modern day in relation to the Civil War, 90% of it is all based on bullshit that the British spread. Because at the end of the day, it wasn't about slavery. Because, I'm sorry, I don't care who you want to talk to, like, everybody was basically an emancipationist, bare minimum. Bare fucking minimum. Because slavery was seen as a problem. It was just a problem that had to be solved slowly, because if it wasn't solved slowly, it was going to create problems, i.e. a war. Because there were enough non-freedom for slaves individuals out there that were like, no, the slaves shouldn't be free. Now, I will also point the abolitionist movement was also just as equally small. Like, people like John Brown, for example, like when people told that John Brown was a great guy and all this bullshit, like, get out of here. It's like, no, he wasn't. He was a fucking mass murderer. Mm-hmm. Like, the dude was, you could honestly call him a serial killer with how many people he fucking murdered.
Mr. Z did a decent video on John Brown.
John Brown was a fucking psychopath. Like, the dude was a terrible human being. Like, I don't care what you have to say. When you just randomly, like, and I don't say randomly, when you travel around looking for people that are pro-slave just so you can shoot them and then fucking scalp them, that's a problem. Yeah. There's a reason why he's literally one of the people that is cited as one of the main inciters of Bloody Kansas.
You know, I got a question in regards to John Brown. Whenever he'd scalp somebody, was that him trying to frame it on the Indians?
There's a lot of, due to the Indian population, because Kansas was right next to the Indian territories, there's a lot of implication that would be had. So yes, I suspect so. Because the whole scalping thing, like, there would be people that would scalp for the express purpose of, like, for example, they would trade scalps to the Indians and whatnot because the Indians would sell shit for them. There was that aspect to it. But also, like, there were bounty hunters that if they couldn't take the head, like, say the face was all fucked up, they would scalp the person to go collect the bounty on it. And so on and so forth. They would only get part of the bounty, but they would still get a portion of the bounty, so on and so forth. So there are some instances where U.S. Citizens would scalp, but generally speaking, like, yeah, it would be a great cover to be like, oh, this guy was killed by some Indians. Like, it would be great cover.
Like massacre. Yeah, kind of like the massacre that the Mormons did. At first they blamed it on the Indians until it later came out that, nah, you were the fuckers that killed all these settlers heading west.
Yep. Which is
also... Oh, and also something else too.
We should have the Mormons, but that's a discussion for later. Anyways,
and also that kind of ties into what we were discussing in regards to the Civil War, because while the Confederacy and the Union were beating each other up, that was when the Mormons set up Utah.
Yes, that's
And the Union was too distracted with the Confederacy to even bother to do anything about Utah. And by the time the war was over and the Reconstruction era started, it was already too late. It
So-
was just something
Yep.
that we had to live with.
So, as I'm not as familiar with U.S. history, what is the issue with establishing Utah? Like, why is that a problem for anyone? That Mormons left your area and moved to another area?
It's not so much that was a problem; it's what they were doing out there.
Oh, what were they doing?
Yeah.
Killing settlers for one.
Yeah, so Utah laid on one else to the west, and so the Mormons were attacking the settler convoys that were going through and raiding them, and it was also to prevent anybody who was a non-Mormon from settling in the Utah area. Basically, the Mormons in their original form, they were attempting to establish their own country.
Their own theocracy.
Well, yeah, theocracy, but you get what I mean.
And also, talking about the Mormon Church, they still run themselves very similarly to how our government does.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So
there's a reason. There's a reason why you cannot go into Utah. Like Salt Lake City is a great city. The problem is that you cannot go there and blaspheme because you will be attacked. There's a reason why I will never go into Utah. Period. Of short.
Well, what do you mean by blaspheme? Are you talking about like talking shit about Brigham Young and Joseph Smith?
Well, no, just in general. Like if you do anything that's against their like for example, the whole hot and cold bullshit with drinks and whatnot. Like, yeah,
Right.
like if you do weird shit like that, they will. Like there are people, I forget what they're called, but they have like these little enforcer groups that will go around. Like basically Mormons are nothing more than Christian fundamentalists that like to embrace Sharia law. Like let's just put it that way.
What is this?
Like basically,
Well, I wouldn't necessarily call them Christian because technically they follow a heretical. They follow a heretical religion.
Yeah, they're non-Trinitarians.
I understand.
So, what is this hot and cold drinks thing? Are you not allowed in Utah, or are Mormons not allowed to like?
Bro, it's weird. They have this weird thing with like I think it's hot drinks. Like you're not allowed to drink hot drinks or something like that in the Mormon Church or some stupid shit like that. Like they have
here's the things about Mormonism. You can't have nicotine. Caffeine is forbidden, which of course means no soda or coffee. That could be what you're talking about.
Oh no! The hot drinks thing. Like there is a thing. Like there is a thing against hot drinks.
It's absurd.
Yeah, it's weird. It's weird. The Mormons again. I advocate the. Should I just okay? But,
I can bleep it out.
Bleep this out.
You were talking about
I advocate for hating the Mormons. Like I just advocate for it through and through. Like they are not good people, and they are not. They should not exist in our nation. Period. And short.
Well, let me ask you this, and this is just a hypothetical. In the event that shit was to go down in this country, like maybe a cyberpunk style collapse of the economy and the government starts losing control and shit, do you think that there's a likelihood that those Mormons are going to rise up and start causing problems and trying to...
Yes, absolutely. Abso-fucking-lutely. So here's the thing with the Mormons. They have basically been preparing for the chance to seize neighboring territories since their establishment. The only reason why they were only able to really take control of Utah is because they're relatively low numbers. But now that they have the numbers and they have the influence, like if you look at a map of the spread of the Mormon religion, you realize that they have solidified control over areas outside of Utah. Like,
oh hell yeah, they're all over the country.
Well, but that's the thing is, at the end of the day, like they have a very distinct goal that, and mind you, a lot of the whole doomsday, the world's gonna end shit, a lot of it is propagated by the Mormon Church. A lot of it. And they do it on purpose. They do it on purpose.
I thought that was all tied to the. I thought all that doomsday. I do know that the Mormons did have some doomsday teachings, but kind of like more on the prepper side of things, from what I understood it. But I was thinking that a lot of this doomsday shit was coming from the evangelicals.
Well, no, the evangelicals have that whole thing, because the evangelicals co-opted that side of things from the Jewish teachings. But because the Jews have so the 6,000 year disaster cycle that we've talked about previously.
Yeah.
That's in the Jewish teachings.
Yeah, the Jews have that in the Torah. It's really funny because now I'm like, holy shit, maybe the Jews as a progenitor group of people, maybe they actually lived through the last disaster cycle.
Well, not trying to say that I'm a fan of Zionism, because I could go kind of. I'm not a real big fan of that personally, but as from a strictly historical perspective, in regards to the Jewish faith, it would make sense that it being as old as it is, that their founding members of that faith would have access to knowledge that was lost to time.
Well, no, that's my point. Is I think, honestly speaking, the Jewish faith might be a little older than we might think. But what were you going to say, Dale?
I was going to say, well, the story of Noah's Ark does track, and the flood does track pretty well, with all that.
Yep.
Oh, see, what was it? Wasn't Gilgamesh a flood story?
Yep.
And then the ancient Chinese religions, they had a flood story.
As did the ancient Mesoamericans and the Chileans, yeah.
Yep.
Now, as far as it being a global flood, I don't think so. But as far as it being like a big-ass disaster that had a lot of flooding, I can believe it.
Well, no, that's the point, is that it would be basically in concept, it would be two massive tsunamis that would travel across the planet. That's what it seems like. But the point is that with the Mormons, they spread a lot of this whole doomsday thing on purpose to scare the shit out of people. They do it in order to create the idea that there's the coming doom on purpose, so that people are on edge all the time. They do it as a means to influence people without actually explicitly influencing people.
Well, then how does
very sneaky.
Well, then how do their politicians like Mitt Romney and any other Mormon politicians that they have at the federal level? I wonder how they play in all this shit.
Depends. I mean, Mike Lee is a Mormon, and he's probably one of the only good people in Congress. But other than that, Mitt Romney, not a good person.
Well, I don't consider Mike Lee a good person, but that's just my own personal takes.
Good person, or having good politics?
No, I don't even think his politics are all that great. I'm sorry, I don't have anything good to say about Mormons. That's the fun thing about it is Lindsey Sterling, for example. She's a Mormon, and I enjoy her music. Doesn't mean I like her. I'll listen to her music. Doesn't mean I like her.
Well, you know what's got to be one of the best television series based off of Mormonism ever was?
What?
The 1979 Battlestar Galactica.
Really? That was based off Mormonism?
What?
Yep.
I didn't know that. That's funny.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me ask you this. Why do you think let me ask you this. Why do you think the leadership of the human colonies was called the Quorum of the 12, and the Mormons called their leadership the Quorum of the 12?
Oh, shit. Okay.
And also in Battlestar Galactica, we're talking about the old version, the one with Lauren Green in it. Humanity came from the planet Kobol. What's the name of the planet that the Mormon God lives on?
Kobol.
Wait, what?
collab. They just changed some letters around.
That's funny. That's funny. Okay, real quick. I need to go do trucks again.
It says I told Mike, just because I talk slow doesn't mean I think slow.
Are you sure about that?
So, the people in Battlestar Galactica who were based off the Mormons, were they the good guys or the bad guys?
What do you think? They were fighting against evil machines called the Cylons. Of course they were the good guys.
I've never actually seen Battlestar Galactica, so I don't know who the factions are in it. Like,
now
Okay, now here's the thing. If you're going to watch Battlestar Galactica to get the real experience of what I was talking about, watch the original 1979 series. Because the one that was created in the early 2000s, it has the name Battlestar Galactica, but it and the original are two totally different series.
yeah, I've not heard any good things about the newer series.
What? The new series, the reimagine? The reimagine is fucking amazing.
It is?
Are you kidding?
Because
it was too friggin' slow.
Okay, and that's the thing, is that they're okay. Oh wow. Oh boy. There's a lot of symbolism in Battlestar Galactica 2004. A lot of fucking symbolism. So you have to you can't pace it any faster or you're gonna miss the symbolism. And so there are a lot of messages in Battlestar Galactica. Like, for example, the whole history of the humanity and the Cylons being one and the same effectively is a huge deal. You know, the cycle, you know, what has happened before will happen again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's a lot of symbolism in the 2004 Battlestar Galactica.
And another difference between the two series is the reimagined series takes place in the distant past, whereas the 1979 series takes place in the then current year.
Yes. So when they discover Earth, it's 1970 Earth.
It's 1980. Season 2 of BSG was called Battlestar Galactica 1980. Which, much to my chagrin, was a shit season because instead of just doing a straight from the last episode to the first episode of the second season, they did a fucking time jump, which didn't make no sense whatsoever because in the last season of season 1, it was made blatantly obvious that they'd found their way to the fucking solar system.
Yep. No,
followed by the Cylons, I might add.
Yeah,
so they brought the fucking Cylons to Earth.
No, I understand you being perturbed by that. I fully understand.
I mean, it's just like what they did with fucking WarWolf in season 4.
Or like with fucking Walking Dead. Like, the time jumps in Walking Dead made no fucking sense the position of where they were.
Well, here's the thing, though, with WarWolf, there was no time jumps. What happened is after season 3, the USA Network picked it up for season 4, and when the USA Network got a hold of it, they got rid of all the original cast members from seasons 1 through 3 and replaced them with brand new characters. The only thing that was the same was the fucking helicopter. Huh. And even then, in season 4, they didn't show the helicopter as much as they did in the first 3 seasons.
Interesting.
All right, I'll leave it plugged up for now since it's not quite high enough. But yeah, no, it's the same. So it's actually really funny now that I think about it. We're talking about TV shows and everything. So one of the things that really bugged me about Walking Dead. So I don't know if you guys remember. I believe it was season 3, or it might have been season 2, when the governor finds that group of National Guard soldiers. And you know, they're just like, oh, we're going to kill these guys and steal all their shit. It's like, why would you kill them? You're talking about trained manpower. You're talking about people in general, you know, a human resource. And you're talking about guys that, frankly speaking, if you said, hey, you know,
we need help, they'd help you.
well, not even just that you need help, but just from the perspective of, okay, so yeah, we built this community and everybody elected me governor. So are you cool with that? They would most likely be cool with it because they're U.S. citizens. They would be like, oh, okay, so you guys held a vote and everything, and everybody elected you. Cool. All right. Awesome.
So pretty much what the best thing would have been to have went up to their gate, waving a white flag, asking to speak with their commanding officer, and then go from there.
Well, no, it was just the fact that they just outright killed them, and it's like, okay, well, if the loyalty test was the problem, you know, it's like, okay, dude, like, I'm sorry, but that's wasted manpower. Yeah. Like, I don't care what you have to say. And mind you, Walking Dead is filled with this, where it's just wasted manpower after wasted manpower after wasted manpower. This is what I loved about fucking seeing the CSM come in with the Commonwealth, the CSM, and all these other big government-style organizations that have come into fruition. It was like, oh, hey, cool. But then the CSM bombs and gases two big communities, and it's just like, never mind. We got more of the same.
Yeah, see,
you know, here's my question in regard to the whole Walking Dead thing. Where the fuck is the president? Don't we have a continuity of government for this sort of shit?
Yeah.
Sorry, I can barely hear you in the cooler back. So.
Yeah, no idea.
Well, here's my idea. Plot convenience.
Yeah, probably. But yeah, in all of those situations, it seems more reasonable that, like, rather than kill them, you attempt to absorb them into your group.
Well, okay, so here's the thing.
Old saying, apes together strong.
Indeed.
Well, I will give the show one thing, and that was in the Fear the Walking Dead series. They did kind of go over the whole fall of the government thing. And what it was is that, at least on the surface, was they were able to identify that the virus was a biological weapon, which it was. It was a biological weapon. And that they needed to find a way to contain it. And so then they just started wholesale killing civilians. And so eventually what ends up happening is the military it splinters like crazy.
Do they ever...
Yeah, soldiers saying I didn't sign up to kill my own citizens and that sort of shit.
Yeah, that was the indication, because after Operation, I forget what the firebombing campaign was called again. What was it? Fuck. Look it up for me real quick. Walking Dead firebombing of Atlanta. What was the operation called?
It's not important to the conversation.
Whatever.
Did they ever find out who made this? Was this a U.S. government biological weapon?
No, it was French government, actually.
Was it an intentional attack, or was it leaked? Like
it got out.
Ah, fair enough.
It got out.
I was fixing to say, if it was the French that done it, then it was an accident. If it was the Chinese that done it, it was an attack.
Yeah, no, it was a French team that was working on different research, and it was and actually really funny. It was kind of like an homage to COVID in a way, in a funny way. It was like, hey, gain of function research is bad because the doctor who led the team, she managed to make her way back to her lab, and a dude shows up. He's part of like a network that's been hunting the scientists responsible for the outbreak, and he just blows her fucking brains.
Based.
But yeah, so there's again with TV series, like there's a lot of problems where you change directors or you change actors and you do all this stuff. What's good, bud? You do all this stuff, and it just ends up creating a continuity issue where it's just like, okay, this is just stupid. Again,
that also reminds me of something else too. That's Jag.
The series?
Yeah, the series. Because from the original series, it had like the same setup, the same style going on. But whenever they made the spin-off NCIS, the last season of Jag, the way it was set up and everything, it was basically like watching an NCIS episode.
Interesting.
Yeah, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. And I often forget that Jag is just the prequel basically to NCIS. I often forget that.
Interesting.
Oh, I love watching Jag.
Which show is better?
Jag.
Interesting.
Well, it depends. If you're like into like the more military stuff, that would be Jag. If you're more into civilian things, NCIS.
Yeah, I would say it's 6 of one, half dozen of the other on quality. Like they're both good shows.
Basically, if you're a fan of CSI, NCIS is your bag.
Yeah, definitely.
God, you know what? Fuck. We started this mess talking about Iran. Then we went into the Confederacy. Then we went into talking about Mormons in Utah. And now we're talking about fucking TV shows.
To be fair, we started on Iran. Then we moved to the Mummy. Then we moved to Confederate stuff. Now we're back to media. We just moved from movies to TV.
Well,
shows.
no. So what actually happened is we were talking about Iran. Then we got into the British. Then we got into the Mummy, and then we went back to the British, got into the American Civil War and how that's all connected, and then we went to talking about the elites and whatnot, and then we started talking about Mormons. Then we got back into media. So
okay, now I can very easily take talking about Jag, going back to Iran. Here's how I can do it. I forgot what season it's in, but there was an episode of Jag where an experimental F-117 that was being retrofitted and tested for use on aircraft carriers accidentally suffered a malfunction and went down over Iran. So we had to go through the whole rigmarole of going through the Australian embassy because the Americans didn't have an embassy in Iran to get our fucking Seahawk back.
Very nice.
And thus, ladies and gentlemen, has been brought full circle.
Yes.
I love it.
Oh, also another good episode was the one where the Cubans got a hold of one of our F-14s and was trying to sell it to Iran. Because at the time, the Iranians didn't have their F-14s in the air. Yeah, it was also a pretty neat little trick at how they were going to sabotage it. The dude had a belt and he cut it half, like 2/3 of the way through, jammed it into the jet engine intake, and as it spun up, it was going to take that belt off, zip it through the engine, and destroy it.
Actually, okay, so great.
Now, mind you, this was television.
Great little segue, actually, into talking about our Iranian F-14s. So,
Don't remind me of that. I'm still crying that we had to give some of those a mercy killing.
well, here's the thing that's really weird for me. Literally the most advanced plane that the Iranians had, and yet they were bones? Like, I don't understand how they...
I can tell you how that happened. Because at the time, we had Northrop engineers over there training the Iranians on how to maintain it. But when the Ayatollahs took over, our engineers that were over there sabotaged and stole everything they could off of those F-14s to make sure they couldn't fly.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yep, that's what happened. The engineers we had over there sabotaged them.
Okay.
Fair enough.
Well, good on you, Northrop.
And also, whenever we decommissioned our F-14s, we destroyed everything on those planes to keep the parts from falling into the black market and going into Iranian hands.
Sounds about right. Okay. I like it.
But I'd like to know why in the hell it took them so fucking long to get them working.
No, they weren't working. They were bones. They were dead. They had no fuel in them, no munitions, nothing. That's why they didn't explode when they got hit by munitions.
I thought they had finally jerry-rigged them to work.
No.
Well, Northrop engineers did a damn good job sabotaging them then.
They weren't able to fix them in like 50 years.
40.
Or 40? Yeah.
45, 50 years. Oh, 40, 45, I think. But yeah. Yeah, in about 4.5 decades, they still couldn't get the things to work, it seems.
I mean, but at that point, hadn't many better aircraft come about that they could have acquired?
You have to remember, though, at the time, the F-14 was the best non-stealth jet flying because it had those, I think they were called Phoenix air-to-air missiles. The F-14 could carry 4 of them, and it could target 4 different aircraft at the same time beyond visual range. The F-14 had a really long reach.
Hold on.
And those Phoenix missiles, if I remember correctly, were radar guided, which is why the F-14 had a backseater to guide those weapons. So yeah, if the Iranians had managed to get those F-14s off the ground and equip them the way that they were originally designed, those jets would have been a fucking menace. Just let me put it this way. The only thing that could have probably successfully shot down an F-14 would have either been an F-35 or an F-22. Definitely an F-22.
Not an F-16?
It doesn't have the range on it that a Phoenix does. I just told you a Phoenix missile can go beyond visual range, and I don't think that there's anything on an F-16 that can. I mean, if I remember correctly, I think an F-14 could shoot down an F-16 and F-15 before they got into firing range.
Why did we then get rid of the F-14 in favor of the F-16, if the F-14 is better?
Because of the Navy.
Did they...
Here's the thing, though. One, the Navy was starting to slim down their air fleet.
Oh, shit. So I have confirmation here. In 2018, Iran had about 40 F-14s remaining, with 2 of them upgraded to F-14 AM. the indication might be that only 5 of the F-14s were actually destroyed. So in reality, they must actually still be flying. Those must have been the planes themselves that were hit must have been bones that they were picking off for parts, but they still have them. Holy shit! I
could have sworn I saw a picture of one of their F-14s flying.
Yeah. So as I was saying, so if the F-14 was better than the F-16, then why did they replace the F-14 with the F-16?
Okay, so
one, it was getting old. Two, it was expensive to operate.
Actually, that's not what happened. So in the U.S. doctrine, we have what is called high-low. The F-14 was our high. Our low was the F-16.
You're talking about the Navy. You're talking about the Navy. Technically, that would have been the F-18.
Well, that's the thing, is that the F-16 did not replace the F-14. That's what I'm trying to explain to him. The F-16 operated in concert with the F-14. And then the F-18 eventually would replace the F-14. Oh. The F-18 is, technically speaking, a better plane, but it has one distinct disadvantage. It's just as expensive to run. It's just as expensive to run.
And it doesn't have the same reach that the F-14 did.
No. Well, the two-seater version with the pilot and navigator can be equipped with ordnance that is more far-reaching. The single-seater they purposely set up as the F-14A, the F-18A, I believe is what it's called, FA, whatever the fuck it is. Yeah. They did set that one up to be a short-range dogfighting style aircraft, specifically because they realized, like, oh, hey, we actually do need this. But the dual-seater F-18s, they can reach out and touch people pretty easily. Now, then
basically the Hornet is the Navy's version of the Falcon.
So why do you need dogfighting fighters if you can just kill everything before it even gets in range?
The problem is
look
when
at the
people
Vietnam
put up more
War.
planes, you have missiles.
Sorry.
Look at the Vietnam War.
No, not just that.
But
what
the Vietnam
happens when
War
they
is
put up more
example.
planes? Yeah, it's a decent example, but what happens when the enemy puts up more planes than you have missiles?
You
can't land on the carrier.
Yeah.
You can't land on the fucking carrier because then you're open to a counterattack. The point is that this is why they develop short-range missiles and long-range missiles independently, because for a long time, the way that we were developing missiles, this was basically through the 60s to the early 80s, we were developing universal missiles to use on our planes. Well, then we realized, because of Vietnam, actually, maybe it's a really good thing to have short-range missiles and long-range missiles. So you use the long-range missiles at range while you're closing the distance, and then the short-range missiles are meant for up close and personal, while you also still have the gun on the plane. This is why Top Gun is still a thing, because originally Top Gun was supposed to be phased out during Vietnam, and then they realized, that's actually a really bad idea. Dogfighting is
circling back to the and another thing too, and I just remember this circling back to the F-14s, is those things were designed to actually shoot down Soviet bombers, because at the time the Soviet doctrine was to fight against an American carrier battle group was to send up waves and waves of bombers equipped with anti-ship missiles, and the F-14s were designed to fly out, engage those bombers with their Phoenix missiles at extended range before the Russians had a chance to launch their anti-ship missiles.
Yep. Now, then you have the F-16, which again, the F-16 and the F-14 were acting in concert. Now, the Navy at the time didn't need a large air force, So you have the F-14 for the Navy, then you have the F-16 and the F-15 for the Army, or for the Air Force. So I will never disagree that the Army Air Corps should be a thing again. The Air Force by itself is a piece of shit. But the point is,
why do you think Space Force was created?
Exactly. The Air Force cannot do space shit whatsoever. But anyways, the point is that the F-16 was the low to the F-15's high. The Navy only just had the F-14, and then later they would get the F-18, which then they would have the FA-18, and then the F-18, which then you had the Hornet and the Super Hornet.
And also, Navy aircraft carriers also operated the Hawkeye, which was their version of airborne warning and control aircraft. They also had, I forgot what the hell it's called, but it had like those turbine engines underneath the wings. They used that for anti-submarine warfare.
Yep. So yeah,
and there's also a little bit of a personal theory that during the Cold War, aircraft carriers also carried atomic bombs.
Oh, they did. They did. The only reason why they did though was because they were meant to resupply the Army or the Air Force, technically speaking, because I forget what model. I can't remember what model of the F-15 it is, but there is a model of the F-15 that is nuclear capable.
I think that's the D model, but I'm not sure.
I can't remember off the top of my head. I just can't. But yeah, the F-15 is capable of carrying an airdropped nuclear weapon, which that version of the F-15 was then superseded by now the F-35, which I believe is the F-35A. Yeah, the F-35A is nuclear capable.
Yeah, the F-35A is operated by the Air Force. The B model is operated by the Navy, and then the C model, which I think is the vertical takeoff and landing model, is operated by the Marine Corps, and I think the Royal Navy operates that one too.
Yes.
And rumor has it that that's also going to be the same model the JMSDF gets whenever they refit their Izumo-class helicopter carriers to handle jets.
Yep, which is going to be hilarious, by the way. The fact that we're supplying F-35s to the fucking Japanese Navy, it's going to be like this. This is so good. Like we are giving, like they're not just kidding.
The Chinese are already shitting their bricks over the Japanese refitting their Izumo class. Just wait until they get the F-35s, and they're really going to start shitting bricks.
Well, no, here's the fun part, is the Israelis just put everybody on notice. Hey, by the way, the F-35 is